Today is March the 30th, 2016. My name is Tanya Finchum. I'm with Oklahoma State University, and today I am on campus in Stillwater to interview Dr. Charles Abramson, and this is part of our Phi Beta Kappa series, so thank you for talking with me today.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time.
Let's learn a little bit about you, starting with when and where you were born.
I was born June 28th, 1956 in Brooklyn, New York. And then when I was about 3 years old, we moved to Manhattan. And we've had that apartment for over 50 years, and now, sad to say, we lost it.
Really?
Yeah, because my brother lived in it, but that's not his full-time residence anymore. So it's rent control, and that was one of the issues. You got to be there full-time. So September 8th is when he has to be out. So I'll go back and then reminisce a little bit. I'll take my wife, and she's never been to New York.
Walk through it and remember, tell stories.
Right, and tell stories, yeah.
Well, what did your parents do for a living?
I've never really knew them. I've never known my mother and father ever living together. And he had a variety of jobs. And it wasn't always the best. My mother, who I stayed with until probably about 10 years old when I was shipped off to military school, various boarding schools, she worked as an insurance broker. And many of her clients, probably most of them, were in Harlem. So when I was a child, we used to go up to Harlem and to do collecting, because she would front the money and then they would pay her in installments. And I had my first hamburger, for example, in Thumford's restaurant in Harlem. I used to go to the Apollo Theater. So it was very, very different. It was actually a lot of fun.
Sure. Well, did you have brothers and sisters?
I had one brother, but it turns out we had to do a genetic test, and we're not related. So we found that out. My life is probably different than most. Everybody has stories, but this is different. Then I have a sister, and we're the same age for 1 month out of the year. Okay. So I was born June 28th, she was born May 22nd. So from May 22nd to June 28th, we're the same age. And then I jump up a year.
Well, did you grow up with her
I grew up in boarding schools, military schools. Yeah.
Well, take me through your early education and first.
Well, it wasn't very. I went to 2 of them, and at that time, what they would do to us would be considered child abuse now. But I did get a good education, and the last one I went to was called New York Military Academy, and that's interesting because Donald Trump went there. John Gotti went there, John Gotti's son went there, and a bunch of others. I could never understand why some people would really get beaten up and others wouldn't. They do whatever they want. And then I realized years later because of the money that they would contribute. So it became obvious that I couldn't stay there. I was getting into fights all the time, and stuff. It was a big mess. So then 8th grade, I lived with my father for a year, and that was a mess also. Then 9th grade, I applied for New York City at the time had several special schools. Bronx Science, a lot of people are familiar with, Stuyvesant High School, and the third was Brooklyn Tech. So I applied for Brooklyn Tech, and much to my surprise, I got in. But it was just like military school. You had to walk on a certain side of the hallway. So instead of going to school, I didn't go. I was in the audience in the TV game shows. And when they tell you that in the 60s that the New York City public school system started to go down, it was true. Nobody cared. I can do whatever I want. But eventually they caught me. So then they sent me to Brandeis High School Annex. That was across from Lincoln Center. I was on 78th Lincoln Center, which it was like 66th, 67th. And you had 17-year-old, 18-year-old 9th graders in there. I got into fights almost every day. So again, I quit. It was easy. They sent me down to Georgia, I think my father, to live on a farm family. And so I would do chores, and then they would take care of me, and I'd go to school. And that probably, I think I was sent back within a week. So I was really almost uncontrollable, by that point. So at the time, my father had a friend called Mandel. I don't remember the first name, but he ran Mandel Security. So I got a job as a security guard at the World Trade Center when they were building it up. And I still have my 8mm films of the World Trade Center. And, I liked that job. It was easy, you can do whatever I want. But I had to go to school. So then I took a test for schools, and I guess I did really bad. and more arguments. But one school would take me, and that was Croydon Hall Academy in Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey, which is out of business now. Same with the first military school. The second one went out of business, but then somebody else bought it. I found that out recently. Really interesting. I always wanted to buy that place and just tear it into the ground. Sort of like what's the famous literary character? Count of Monte Cristo. Right, when he bought that Ireland that he was in prison on, right, tore it down. So I'm in that school. They asked me what grade I am. I'm supposed to be in. I never said I didn't go to ninth grade, and they're about to go bankrupt. They didn't care. I said 10th, because it's been my experience that usually one hand doesn't know what the other one is doing. So I counted on that, and lo and behold, they didn't. So I did pretty well. I had to get all A's because I needed the benefit of the doubt from people that even though this guy has problems, he can still, he's okay, right? He can work through it. He can do some good things. But I was always being sent back because my father couldn't afford it. And that's all, and that's was always that way for a long time. You go to a dentist, you can't pay the bill, they send you home, right? So it was, really, I didn't care for it too much. I didn't like it. So, time for 11th grade, I went back to public school. The same stuff. This time it was Brandeis High School proper on, I think it's say 86th Street, 87th, 85th. Same thing. Now I'm fighting against other groups of people. So I quit earlier. But I remember one teacher, her name was Mrs. Kane, Ellen Kane, and she must have been, I don't think, if she was over 5 foot, I would be surprised. And she used to fight these giant students, and she got their attention, and she got my attention. So the little that I did stay in school was because of her. I think it was an English class. So I remember she had us do some sort of project on women, and I did Helen Reddy, Women Roar, something like that, right? So I got an A on it, so I remember that she was impressed. I tried to find her years later, but I think she died, or I just couldn't get the number. So I quit again, and where did I go back? I went back to World Trade Center being a security guard. I saved my money. Now came time for 12th grade, and I went back to Croydon Hall because they knew me in 10th grade. So I did, did pretty well, and now it came time to go to college. They would help you try to get to college, and I remember the owner, his name was William Carr, and he said, Abramson, you don't have any grades for 9th and 11th grade. And I said, the New York City school system, they probably just lost it. So I don't know what happened, but I applied to New York University, Seton Hall, and Boston University, and I got into all three. Much I was shocked, and I picked Boston University because it was the furthest away. Just get out of New York, because if I stayed there, I would have I would have problems. Right? I would have problems.
You were making these decisions on your own?
Right.
On your own without...
Yeah, I've always been on my own, for a long time. And that's part of the reason why I am what I am. Not distrustful, and right. Some of these characteristics that people don't like, but other people do like them, right? Because I can get things done. So now I'm at Boston University, and imagine, you're a student, you're a professor. I walk in your office the first day of class, saying that I want to work with you, I want to be a behaviorist, to study, how to manipulate and control behavior, which is what I do for a living. Right? A lot of people get into psychology because they want to help people, but that's not my intention. I want to understand how to control and manipulate, and that's what I do for a living. So he took me in, and I worked every day for 4 years, never took a day off. And I got Phi Beta Kappa, Sigma Xi. I published my first paper, I think, as a junior. And so I learned that hard work pays off. I was able to get scholarships, and to this day, anybody who wants to work with me, I never look at reference letters. I never look at grades. I don't care. But if you get that chance, but if you fail, some people do, some students do, you can never say you were never given a chance. And that's what I think is my best contribution. And then when I got Phi Beta Kappa, nobody went to the ceremonies and stuff, and it was Boston and New York. My mother was very proud about that, because she always knew about Phi Beta Kappa, like so did I. At the time, if you look at old movies, like The Thin Man, she used to like, I think it was William Powell, Myrna Loy, and The Thin Man. She loved those movies. They were like husband-wife detective team. She was rich, and she married a detective. So they try to solve crimes together. And Phi Beta Kappa is mentioned quite a bit. She was disappointed I became a psychologist because she thought the best thing you can be is a theoretical physicist. But hey, you can't have everything. And when I got to Phi Beta Kappa, she was very proud, and she asked to be buried with the Phi Beta Kappa key, which is what I did. And as a kid, she'd always take me to. She never finished high school. I don't think my father ever did. But she'd always take me to plays, to the museums, all sorts of things, to try to encourage that interest. And she would have me read biographies and autobiographies of people that achieved things after having difficult times. And I was like Helen Keller. When I was a kid, that was popular. Helen Keller was popular, and there's several others. And to this day, I'm an avid reader, and I appreciate what she did for me.
Well, at what point did you start the Phi? I mean, was it because the school wasn't? I mean, down that path, you could have gone different directions too. But
yeah, I always heard about Phi Beta Kappa, and Boston University had a chapter.
Okay.
And again, I got decent grades, good grades. My language was Sanskrit in college, which was rare, so I think that made a difference, because it's not all about grades. You got to have certain, grade point average and so on, but it's also about breadth of knowledge. So I took a lot of philosophy classes and other kinds of things.
And you knew that going in, that was your goal, to get Phi Beta Kappa?
No, it's never a goal.
A goal.
It was to get educated. And if I achieved a certain level, then that level would be acknowledged by Phi Beta Kappa. And in the end, that's what happened. Because if I was an engineering major, I would not be eligible for Phi Beta Kappa. But it worked out. It worked out fine. And she was, again, she was very proud of that.
Well, those 4 years at Boston, does anything else stand out? I mean, if you worked every day.
Yeah, it was just. Even today, even though I'm a Regents Professor and have an endowed chair, I'll never be outworked by anybody. I get here at 5 in the morning, 5:15 on weekends. I'm still here. I don't need to do that. And I think part of it is that that early life experience. It's hard to stop. And that, I think that's part of it. And then I went on to graduate school at Boston University, and that was an odd thing. I didn't apply to any place else, so I take my first vacation. But before that, I had to take the GRE. And I tell students, you really got to study for these tests. You can't just use the Socratic method of, thinking that within you have all the answers. You just have to get someone to help draw it out. So I'm looking at the test. I look at the question. I think whatever the answer, multiple choice, and the number pops in my head, and I put it down. I didn't do well. I got the lowest scores in the history of Boston University for accepting graduate students. I think it was like 220 and 210. And they gave you 200 points. But I had Phi Beta Kappa, I had all the the experience. I was out publishing some of the faculty members. So this test doesn't really mean anything, at least when it comes for me. So then I get back from my first vacation ever, a cross-country trip in an old Volkswagen camper, from here to from New York to Boston to Colorado. So I get back and then Marcus says, you pissed so many people off about that because you didn't take it seriously. But because I was always around the department, everybody knew me. I had the old kung fu hat at that time. It was popular in the 70s. I trained pigeons. They would come flying whenever they saw me. So everybody in that area knew me. And one of the people that I met at that time was a fellow named Jeffrey Bannister, who was a geography professor. And then years later, when I applied to graduate school, became the dean. And then he overruled people that let me in. So, I was always very fortunate in that way.
Relationship connections and such.
Yeah, but I think I do the same thing. You see people that may have hard times, but they show something. Why not give them a break? And that's what I try to do. But then you have to take advantage of it. But then I realized and I tell people, unless you go for a specific reason, you shouldn't go to the same undergraduate place as a graduate student. Right? I think in my cases, for some students, I asked them to apply and work with me. For example, Anna Chigas-Moser, she was an undergraduate psychology major and a zoology major. Now she works with me, and now she just has the graduate research fellowship from NSF. Because I can do these things. But I only would ask certain students for that. ones that work hard, and so on. Not every student. So it quickly became apparent that I should go someplace else. So I wrote this fellow named M.E. Bitterman, who was at the time probably America's most famous comparative psychologist. He died a few years ago at the age of 90. And I wrote him a letter. We didn't have really email at that time. It was just a letter with a stamp on it saying it was like God gives us psychology and stuff. And then I get a letter back saying that, okay, why don't you come out to Hawaii? So I did that. But then he turned out to be a creep. Really a bitter man. But, so I came back to BU, I kept on going, but then I still didn't want to do it. I wanted to go back to Hawaii, someplace else. So I wrote him again. He said, sure, come on out. So essentially I was enrolled in 2 graduate schools simultaneously, Boston University and University of Hawaii. And then eventually Boston University let him direct my dissertation. So then...
So your diploma's from Boston?
Boston University, but all the work really was done at University of Hawaii. So now it's time to defend the thesis. It just so happened that one of the meetings that Bitterman goes to is called Psychonomic Society. And it happened to be in Boston that year. So he was able to come down and, the defense and stuff. But there was a fellow that had an ad looking for someone that can do neurobiology of crustacean learning. So I applied for it, and lo and behold, I got the job. I didn't realize that because they advertised in Science, other kind of places, right? You just happened to be there and advertised at that conference. So again, just a very bunch of lucky things. So of course, what do? I see the ad. First thing I do is rip it down off the thing, right? I want that job, and it's back in New York of all places. So I get the job, and then I live in the apartment that I lived as a kid. And then my mother died just a few months after that. I think I got the job in January, she died in March. And if I wasn't there, we would have lost the apartment. Right? Because under rent control, and you have succession rights, you have to be there. Right? And that has to be your primary residence. So then when she died, my brother moved in. And then when I took this job in '93, I got tenured there in the biochemistry department. And then I moved from New York to OSU because I wanted a full service university. As you know, it's always better to look for a job when you don't need one. So a lot of it was me interviewing OSU rather than the other way around. Because I could still be in New York. I didn't have to come here. And I wanted to meet other people in different departments, like entomology and so on. So then one of the professors that I met was Ray Eikenberry. And he had a student named Italo Aquino. Italo Aquino was from Brazil. And at that time, you can be, probably even now, but less so, you can be a professor with just a master's degree in Brazil. Now it's changed, you got to get a PhD. So he came back to OSU to get his PhD. And then he told me that he works with African-Ice honeybees as a laboratory. I jumped right on that thing. We got a grant, then I started doing African-Ice honeybee research, and that's how I met my wife.
Okay.
Right. So it's just a different... probably my path was not the traditional path.
No, not at all.
And then when I won a national teaching award, they asked me to, what do I think is a good teacher, and I said I don't really, and I say this with all sincerity, I don't believe in good teachers. It's only good students. I've had lousy teachers. I learned from them, as well as I learned from the good ones. And it's up to the student to learn. And if you get a bad teacher, we'll pick up another book, right? Or I guess now with all the YouTube stuff, look for other explanations. But it's your life, it's not the professor's life. And I never let anybody stand in my way when it comes to that. Because it's my life, I make the decisions. And some people didn't like what I wrote. And I remember as a kid thinking, what job can I get that I can be left alone and do what I want? And that's a job like this. I had no love of being a professor, I still don't. I think a lot of, some people just should not be professors. But, that's not my call. So for me, it's like I won the lottery. I can do pretty much whatever I want, within reason, right? So for me, this job is the closest thing to being self-employed without the risk. Excuse me, and I value people who are self-employed, because that's not easy to do, especially in today's society. If I don't do anything stupid, I got a lifetime income like I won the lottery. I get to travel the world. I only work technically 9 months out of the year. I can get grant money. People like what I do. You know, I published a lot of books, a lot of articles. I just came back from Spain with a group of students looking at Islamic contributions to science. So, you know, I don't have really a worry in the world.
It's more than a 40-hour week, though.
Right, but you know, for me it's a vocation.
Yeah.
Though sometimes, you know, it does some of the things that we have to do. It's like now you got to be like an accountant. You got to worry about every single word that comes out of your mouth. That stuff I don't like. I'm glad it hasn't happened here yet, but I think it's only a matter of time.
At what point did you decide professor was the route you were going to go?
Well, I saw what they did, and again, I wanted a job that could be left alone, do what I want, and that was being a professor.
Well, with a background in psychology, did you do private practice at some point?
Now, when I was a student, it's all changed now. Most of the programs, clinical program, and say experimental, they took most of the same courses. So many of the kids that I went to school with in the experimental program became behavior therapists. There's only me, John Neal, maybe one other became academic psychologists. And I did some clinical work too, because that was all part of the training. Now it's totally separate programs. And the courses, the tracks are for the most part separate. Like Marcusella was a licensed behavior therapist, so he would be able to you know, train some of the students in an experimental program who wanted to be therapists rather than academic psychologists.
I'm curious about what prompted you to take a vacation.
Well, because you know, I met my goal.
Okay.
And then there's this woman that I met that she was a country western singer in Colorado, so I was going to go out there and then drive her back to Nashville. So that was part of the motivation too. Also, you know, I wanted to see, you know, the United States, and yeah, it was good.
So prior to going to Boston U, you'd just been to New York and Georgia?
Yeah, New York, Georgia, you know, New Jersey,
New Jersey.
Upstate New York, but that.
Well, when you went to
That's right
Georgia,
about
did you travel by car, or did you put you on a plane or train?
Well, that's the thing I never really cared for. I think it was about 10. I did not know I was going to go to military school. So I remember one summer my mother's crying, so I knew something was up. So he comes over, my bags are packed, takes me to the airport, and he gives me a piece of paper and he says, "When you get to, I'm going to put you on a plane. When you get to Florida, call this number." And that's what I did. And then I'll never forget it. It was one of those station wagons with the fake wood paneling, you know, at the time. Mm-hmm. And it said FAA, Flood Air Academy. The guy goes, "Abramson, yes." Takes my bag, get in the car, and then I get processed. Then as I get done processed, I'm on a parade field and I just lay down, looking up at the sky and saying, "Boy, I'm in trouble now." And that's how it began.
Well, she decided to send you, or your father decided?
That was him.
Yeah.
I guess, you know, I didn't know. Because every time they were together, it was nothing but arguments. Not so much him arguing with her, as opposed to she arguing, you know, with him over the silly things. But again, I didn't know the history.
Well, up to age 10, well, it was pretty normal.
She used to have money at one time. I guess with the insurance, I don't know how she got it. And then one year, it was all lost. So I remember the Christmases, she would have a lot of presents under the tree. But then after a certain Christmas, that was it. It was over. So, you know, something happened. We're never a close family. I could even tell you her birthday. And I remember once I gave her a Mother's Day gift. And it was one of these statues that said, "World's Greatest Mother." And then she threw it at me, said, "I never want to see this junk again." Never gave her another present.
Did your brothers and sisters go down a similar path?
But my sister didn't finish high school. And then she stayed behind. And then, you know, she still got problems to this very day. And sometimes, you know, you wonder how you can have people under the same environmental condition, but one does this, the other one does that.
Mm-hmm. Well, she didn't get sent off to military boarding school.
No, in many ways, she may have had it worse off because she had to stay behind. But I don't know that.
Is she younger or older?
We're the same age from 1 month out of the year.
That's what you said.
Yeah, so I'm 59 now, and she's 58. But May 22nd she'll be 59. Then June 28th I'll be 60. Okay. And these early life experiences, you never forget them. You always, it stays with you all the time, right? That's why I was glad, at least with the Phi Beta Kappa, when I earned that at least I can pay her back in some respects. She died a long time ago, and I think she would have been very proud of the stuff that I've done. And she was Italian. She was born in Rome, and she came here. Then she married my father, and he was Jewish. So at that time, it was considered a mixed marriage. So we never knew, except for Aunt Emily and her husband Uncle Rainey, we never knew the Italian side of the family. But I do remember he had another sister, Aunt Alice. And if I'm going off topic, let me know. So he was a creep. He had one eye and treated her really badly. So he's in the hospital now, so we're going over to visit. And he's about to sign some document with a lawyer there to sell the house from right under his wife. And literally, he starts shaking, and the pen drops out of his hand, and he dies. There wasn't a dry eye in the place, except for the lawyer. He earned every bit of it. Yeah. So, and they still have that house.
It must have been interesting growing up in New York in that time period.
Oh yeah, I think it was even with all that, I think it was better than what the kids do now. We played stickball, roller hockey, all sorts of games out in the street. Now people just do the cell phone stuff and the computer games.
But you couldn't wait to get out.
Right. Yeah. Then our building had a doorman on that side of the street. And the doorman would be the one now to take, to try to take a look at the kids, make sure they don't get hurt, that kind of thing, right? Now you got to worry about doormen, molesting, right? The times have changed.
Yes.
Right, times have changed. But we had with the roller hockey, the punch ball, stick ball, stoop ball. It was, I enjoyed it. You get and our neighborhood was always very diverse. Puerto Ricans, Dominicans, African Americans, Italians, all over.
Ever visit the public library?
Yep. In fact, I shouldn't admit this, but I still have a book from that public library.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And I always loved the public library. You go to Boston, these classic libraries that you just don't see anymore. With the lions in front and so on. Yeah, I always enjoyed the library.
That wasn't the reason you were getting into fights, though, was because you liked books.
No, I was getting into fights for other reasons. And Marcusella retired a few years ago, so I went up there for his retirement party and gave a speech. And he remembers the time. I always call him Dr. Marcusella, and we didn't socialize. I don't socialize with my students even today. If they do something good, I take them out to dinner or whatever. But there's always I'm always Dr. Abramson or Dr. A. I'm not Charles, to them. So he takes me out to some place called Jacob Wirtz, where they used to brew their own beer near the North End. So someone, I don't know, either said something to him. Anyway, I didn't like it. I almost killed that guy. That's what it was. And he remembered that. They had to pull me off this person. I would have killed him. So I really thank him for doing a lot for me. Even though again we didn't socialize, but he gave me the opportunity. All right. And again, I try to do that today. Everybody can work with me, no questions asked. But if you fail, don't complain that, hey, nobody ever gave me a chance. You blew your chance.
You get second chance? No.
Yeah.
Well, when you were looking for another position, was there other competition besides OSU?
Well, Brooklyn College was one, but I really wanted to get out of New York.
So you came to OSU in
I think it was 93.
93.
So I got hired in 92, but then I came in 93 because I wanted to finish some of my work that I was doing in New York.
Well, Stillwater quite different from
the
big city.
Right, big difference. Yeah, and then I realized that at least in New York, maybe it's different now. If you argue with somebody, you shake hands, so here they can hold a grudge for a decade. That's what I've noticed, and it's really, I think in some cases, unfortunate. Also, they don't seem to like blunt speaking, like we do in New York. Maybe some people just tap dance around something. You want me to do something? You ask me. Like even today, if somebody asks me to do something on an email list, I don't respond to it. You want me to do something for you? You pick up a phone or send me an email. Better you pick up a phone. Right? I don't respond to group emails. And even when when I was doing the getting information for Phi Beta Kappa, I sent personal emails. Right? It's not that hard to do.
Well, then, since we're there, how did you get involved with putting forth the application here?
I knew that OSU was trying to get a Phi Beta Kappa chapter, because I knew from Perry Gethner, but I didn't know, like, I never met him personally. I just knew the name, and that's an amazing story. So when I teach, I always try to get there early so I can do my demonstration. I need time to set up. So here's this class. It's a big classroom, only maybe 5 or 6 people in there, and this guy is always late. So I tried being nice, knock on the door, all right, at different times, and then finally I had enough. I think it was like 2 weeks into the semester, 6 classes. So I go in there and I start complaining. And who was it? Perry Gethner. Would you believe it? Ooh. I couldn't believe it. It's this guy, right? The guy that I asked to be on the committee to help, get Phi Beta Kappa to OSU. But to his credit, we became friends. To his credit, it didn't make a difference to him.
He didn't hold a grudge.
Right, didn't hold a grudge. Right, but he's from the East Coast too. He was, he wasn't born in this part of the country. So again, I always appreciated that. And maybe in your life, I've had this happen several times. People you may have disagreements with early on become good friends later. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened with with Perry and the others. So that was kind of, I couldn't believe it. I'm arguing with the guy that I'm asking to be on the committee. But I was right. I mean, he shouldn't. I think he would say that he shouldn't be going over time when you have another professor with a class coming in. Right, it's a matter of respect. But again, at least he was able to go past it.
Did everyone you asked say yes?
Say again?
Did everyone that you asked to be involved say yes?
I don't know, but he asked me, and I certainly said yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I wanted to do this, because I thought it was very important. I know this part of the country, Phi Beta Kappa is not generally as well known as the East or West Coast, but it is something to be really proud of, especially from the parents. I remember that first induction ceremony. I gave the speech as a historian about the history, and you see the look in the parents' eyes and stuff. It's worth all the effort.
Well, talk a little bit more about your role in the application process.
Well, the application, I didn't do that much. I had to find out essentially all the people at OSU, all the faculty who were Phi Beta Kappa, and that's what I did. It took a while, but I was able to get the number, because I guess the national office needs a certain number of Phi Beta Kappa faculty, and we had enough. It was fun to see husband-wife teams that were Phi Beta Kappa. There were several on campus. And in our psychology department, I think we have maybe not the most, but up there. I think physics may have had the most. I think we got at least 5 here. Wow. I think physics at the time had just as many, if not more, maybe 7. The math department had quite a few too.
Well, they'd already been through 1 or 2 applications before you got here, from what I understand.
Right, but it's every 4 years or every 3 years that they can do again if you were denied. And I got to go through again to find out how many Phi Beta Kappa faculty we have here to keep it up. Because part of my role as historian is, besides the project that we're working on together, also is to maintain the website and do other kinds of things that shows the history of what we're doing.
Well, as the historian, and you know what we've all covered, is there something we've not hit on along the way?
Well, I think we got, once you get President Hargis, we would have had a lot of the major players. Okay. Because, certainly Dr. Gethner, Dr. Crowder, who helped get a lot of the information. Again, President Hargis, he certainly had a big role to play to help us get that. And I remember, my wife was always asking me, how come you can't get tickets for the football game? I think I told you this story. Right. And can't you go to the president's box? So, the guy's busy, he doesn't know who I am. So they asked, once we got the chapter, he asked, what can we do, for you? So I said, football tickets. And then lo and behold, he came through with the, we were in his box, and my wife was very happy. And then it worked out for 2 years in a row. Yeah, so she's very happy.
For the entire season or just a
Just
game?
for it was one game.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
But still, it was,
Yes.
it's a real nice place to see the football game, from that box. And then, of course, you get your food and stuff, it's nice. And meet other people.
Well, were you in Florida when the vote was taken?
No.
No, you weren't among that
Yeah,
group?
that was only for the bigger people. Yeah. But that's fine. Yeah, I mean, I don't need to fly around too much as it is.
Well, if you buried the key with your mother, did you get a replacement?
Yep, I got a replacement.
Is that important to you? I know.
Yeah, and then I also did something else that I don't know if it's legal or not. I had a medallion made. Yeah. I can show that to you if you like.
Why would make it illegal?
Because I think the national office really guards that symbol.
Oh, okay.
Like you can't put it on T-shirts, things like that.
Well, then we won't do it on tape.
Okay, thanks.
Because it may show up online.
Yeah, but it's really nice. I did a good job with that thing.
Just made one for yourself? Or?
Right, just made one. I'm thinking about getting one for Perry when he steps down, because this is his last term as president, because there's term limits. I think there's term limits for what I do also. But I think after the second term, 3-year term, that's it.
Those rules based on this chapter or the national chapter?
Yeah, the national.
Then be off a term and come back?
I might. But I don't know. Because unfortunately, I do so much international travel that as soon as the semester's over, I'm gone. Mm. The first time I wasn't. I left later, so I was able to give the history speech. But for the last 2 years, I couldn't. So someone else had to do that. And I don't know, this year I won't be able to do it either, because I'll be leaving. So I sort of missed that. The first year it's always nerve-wracking because you don't want to fumble and stuff like that. But it's nice to see the parents' face and so on, and the kids are all proud.
What else do you recall about that ceremony?
A lot of work went into it, and we had it in the ballroom the first time.
In the student union?
That's right, in the student union.
Okay.
So we had practice. It was it was a real tense, at least for me anyway, tense kind of thing, because you don't want to blow that with the parents being there. And when we had the foundation ceremony, I had to bring up Dean Stringer to the stage, and I almost knocked him over. And that was crap. But it happens. I was able to get him before he fell. I think I maybe knocked off his hat or something like that.
So you were in regalia?
Oh yeah. Ugly. Yeah, but because they rented them. I think it's better if you have your school colors. So I'm thinking about getting one for Boston University, but it's those things are very expensive. But they look nicer than the rental things. They look like a bunch of rags. And that hat is, a mortarboard hat is, not convenient. It slides off a lot. But I think I can spring for the Boston University, and I like that. What else can I tell you?
Well, you're not going to demonstrate the secret handshake.
It's supposed to be secret. But that's why at the ceremony they never gave the students a secret handshake. So to this day, I don't know whether it's the same secret handshake across chapters or is it just the one that was unique to Boston University.
And it's not per person; it's per chapter, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. That's what I don't know. And nobody ever says anything, so you never know. And also, I don't know whether they still do that tradition. I guess I can find out from Boston University if they still do it.
Would you put that on your Vita?
Oh, yeah, Phi Beta Kappa.
You remember?
Yeah. Also Sigma Xi 2, which is sort of like the science version, at least at one time, of like Phi Beta Kappa. So they get 2 of those as an undergraduate, which is, I appreciate it. But certainly Phi Beta Kappa is the more prestigious.
Mm. Well, moving forward, do you plan to retire from OSU?
I thought I was going to retire. I can do it in 4 years because I can't be the only faculty member that sees this. I mean, it's just changed too much. It's not what it was when I first began. Every generation says that, but it's noticeable. Now you have to have plagiarism software. You can't really talk about issues without somebody getting upset. I've had a number of these things, and it's just really distasteful. The university, you're here to get new ideas, to expand yourself, right? Now you got safe zones, you got this, you got that. I mean, just in my view, it's just ridiculous. And it's somebody should say something. Say, you're here to learn. If you don't like it, there's plenty of other choices you have. If the faculty don't like it, well, feel free to retire or go some. No one's keeping you here, right? But we're here to have these students to challenge their views, and that I don't see that happening as much anymore. Thank God it's still that way here for the most part. But other places it's terrible. Like Emory University, just the other day, somebody was chalking something about Donald Trump, like a Donald Trump club, like we do here, all these different kinds of clubs. Well, some people got so upset that now they have to go into therapy. Come on, I mean, and this is Emory University, supposed to be like the the Harvard of the South, right? Or some of the ridiculous majors that people can can engage in. You're never going to get employed. You get to go into debt. The average college student is $27,000 in debt, and that debt is unforgiven. And I understand that college is not just a job training place, right? But these other things you can take on your own. Take a course in this or in that. So this is what sort of upsets me the most. Also, now we got to be like accountants. That's the other thing. You can't. It's not easy to engage in what I would consider professorial activities.
Well, were there other universities that tried to woo you away from OSU?
Yeah, I turned down a couple of jobs. Yeah. But I do like it here, and I won't retire now. I accept another graduate student, and I'll probably keep on working.
Until you're 90.
Right, until yeah. I was going to say until I die in the classroom with a piece of chalk on my hand, but we can't use chalk anymore because that's another thing. Right? You got to use these markers that after 5 or 6 uses, you got to throw them away and get new ones. Right? All for some silly, silly version.
Well, are you still doing bee research?
Oh yeah, we got part of that $4 million grant to look at decision making, the molecular analysis of decision making, and our part is honeybees, and we're going to do it in Turkey because we can. They have they're home with 20% of the world's subspecies of honeybees, and we have a place that has got 2 of these subspecies all under the same environmental conditions. Genetically, we keep them apart, so there's no mixture, but they all have the same environmental conditions. Now, of course, we're worried about what's going on in Turkey, and so we have to be concerned with that.
Well, when you first came to OSU, you had bees?
Oh yeah, it was one of the first things I did.
Where did you keep those?
And you might remember the Dairy Bar building.
Yeah.
Now it's a Bellman Research Center, and I had them on the roof.
Hunter.
And then many times, and then it would fly into my this office that they gave me. So I'd do experiments there. And from time to time, the OSU police would come over because they heard that somebody reported some guy in a white suit on the roof. And that was me. Then eventually they stopped coming over because they knew it's me.
It may be a dumb question, but how did they learn to fly into you?
You train them. Yeah, it's amazing what they can do given the size of their brain. They're really phenomenal organisms. And I've been working with bees. When I left Boston University, I went over to Hawaii. Bitterman was working with bees. That's why I started getting interested in honeybees. We also work with fish, pigeons, and I do the same thing. I work everything from ants to elephants. And now I'll be working with the aquarium, developing some teaching exercises for the Oklahoma Aquarium, and they'll give me a small research space. So that'll work out fine. Then I'll try to do it at the zoo, and it's hard to work at the zoo because everybody thinks they're king and queen of something they don't want to share. I learned the best way is try to work together. And some people say, I remember I applied for some job here. I'll never get a administrative job here. And one person asked me, "You don't like authority, do you?" And I said, "Well, it depends on the authority." It's like, well, you should work in a team. It depends on your team members, right? If you're surrounded by a bunch of people unmotivated, it's better to work by yourself.
Well, is there really an issue with bees in Oklahoma?
Many years
decline?
ago, I was on TV and I said Africanized honeybees are becoming in Oklahoma. And as I knew from Brazil, I did an experiment where I put a colony of honeybees in a refrigerator that was, cold. Was cold. I lowered the temperature, so they would forage outside, but they would come back in, and they lived there for 30 days, the length of the experiment. And these animals aren't stupid, because if it's cold, they're going to find warm places. And that's what happened. I'm not a big believer in colony collapse disorder. Unless some people thought it was cell phones. So we did a cell phone study. Cell phones have no effect on this, on honeybees. I had a reporter, I can't remember the station, come out. So I gave her a cell phone. She had a cell phone, and I put her in front of my honeybees. Yeah, she's surrounded by bees, but nothing with the cell phone. Right? I think it's inappropriate use of pesticides. Also, a lot of inbreeding reduce their immune system, because we don't get honeybees from other countries, for example, to replenish the population. In Turkey, there was a big scandal where someone tried to smuggle out and bring to the United States honeybee semen, drone semen, with the idea of trying to repopulate or give genetic diversity to the bees here. So that was, they weren't able to get away with it. And there are people working on the problem, but again, I don't think it's, or to say global warming, so, the point is nobody knows. It's probably more likely a combination of factors, especially when it comes to the use of pesticides.
Have you been stung?
I'm highly allergic to honeybee venom, so I've been stung, and I got to be very careful, because one sting, I end up in the hospital. So you just be careful, and it's a good lesson in life. That's one thing about working with animals. The lesson I learned from the bees: you leave me alone, I leave you alone. Right? We can all work together. Don't bug me, I won't bug you. And that's what I learned from these honeybees.
In high school, when you were there, you never imagined being here?
No. And that's why no one from my background ever come up here. That's why I was very surprised that how easy it is to track somebody down on the internet. Because I would not want anybody from my childhood to come up here. Because again, my background was very different than most. I remember when I got tenure, the dean at the time, a different one now, said people like you don't normally get jobs like these, and that's true. They don't.
Well, you had tenure before you came here.
Right.
But you had to go through the process again.
Yeah, I had to give it up. Yeah, then at the time they gave me a big starter pack. It wasn't that big, but it was bigger than anybody had here at that time. And then when I got here, some people didn't like me, and they tried to fire me. So then the dean stepped in, and I always appreciate this, Smith Holt. He got rid of people on that committee. And for me, that's an administrator. You don't let the process run out, because then I would have to do the appeal process. And an appeal process is much like overtime in any kind of sporting event. You never know. You may be the better team, but a bounce here, a bounce there, looking left versus looking right can make all the difference in the world. This guy did what he was supposed to do, like I would have done, stepped in and said, hey, you're going to be off this committee. And then I found out later when they got something else that somebody came and said to the people here, make sure you don't have any problem with Abramson's tenure. So I appreciated that too. Because an administrator is supposed to mean something, right? Not just be a pencil pusher, paper pusher. So I always appreciated Smith Holt. A lot of people, I guess, didn't like Smith Holt, but I appreciated him for this. He was a stand-up guy.
And he gave you, well, he would have been in that position when you started helping with Phi Beta Kappa.
No, he was long retired.
Gone.
Yeah, and I've been here for I think 5 university presidents, 4 or 5 department heads. A lot of faculty that run through this department. Either they lost their jobs because they didn't get tenure or reappointment, or they just went someplace else. And that, I think, is some people say, well, that's the normal course of things in academics, but I've only had 2 jobs in my career: Downstate Medical Center, biochemistry department, and the one here. But other people, I guess, they say that they move from place to place to place. I wouldn't want to do that.
Well, where do you consider home nowadays?
I don't really. It's funny you ask that, because I take all these trips. I come back through Tulsa, Oklahoma City. I don't really view that I have a home. Because I don't look at it that way. Because I thought, in New York, I've been there once in 23 years. And only went back for a couple of days when my father got inducted to Boxing Hall of Fame in New Jersey. He said, oh, I'm nominated. And I said, well, okay, if you get elected, I'll go and hear you. So I went back for, I think, one day. Then he gave that thing in the evening, and then I left the next day. So I've been back since. So once in 23 years.
So, boxing?
Yep. I still got, I remember meeting Muhammad Ali when he was Cassius Clay. And he put on fights in World War II. He was called, I still got these clippings, he was called the bastard gunner from, he could kill anything, this guy, anything that moved. And if you ever been to New York, you'd notice the kiosks that they have for newspapers, like the old newspaper stand. Mm-hmm. And I can verify this. His father ran out on the family. So him, his brother, and his sister, and the mother had to sell newspapers to make a living. And you couldn't sell newspapers in certain areas because you get in trouble. So she got arrested. The mother got arrested twice. And to make a long story short, the kiosks they have now is because of her. I think it was Mayor LaGuardia that signed a law that you can have kiosks. And it was because of his mother. So now World War II, he's in Chicago. He enlisted in the Army Air Corps on B-25s. He was a gunner and a radio operator. And everywhere he went, he'd be looking for, no matter where he went, Chicago or any other place, he's looking for his father. So he's in a group of soldiers marching someplace in Chicago. He looks around. Who's he see? Some old guy staring at this group, this company of soldiers. It was his father. So then he got the father together back with the mother, but they were unhappy for the rest of their lives. But it was, again, an interesting story. But then he was in New Guinea, so I still got all his old military stuff.
Well, if he was a boxer, is he the one that taught you how to fight?
Yeah, he gave me a lot of tips that I used to use quite effectively. When you're fighting outside, mm-hmm. Turn around so that your opponent is facing the sun. Also, kick them until they don't move. And when I was a kid, they used to say girl fighting, right? Because you're kicking somebody. Now they call it karate or kung fu, right? Because no one remembers the loser; they remember the winner, right? And there are things like that. Even when I have my female students, I always tell them, make sure if you're going to have something like you're wearing or what I'm wearing, have a breast pocket and put a pencil in there. Because if you're going to get attacked, if you're a woman, 9 times out of 10 it's from behind. Take out that pencil, go just like that. I had to do that in Russia, and it's amazing how effective it is. Also, of course, the knees, the joints, and so on. But they should learn, self-defense. And one of the issues, for me anyway, is that they don't tell you, or they don't prepare you that you have to hurt somebody because they're trying to hurt you. And that's probably the hardest lesson to learn. That's why I say kick them until they get on it, until they don't move. And that's what I was doing to that guy with Henry Marcus Hill. And then they had to pull me off. I would have killed him. I would have killed him. And he remembered that. It was interesting because I always appreciated what he did for me, and I try to do that even to this day. I think now he's retired to Cape Cod, but we don't talk or anything, that kind of thing. But I always appreciate what he did for me.
Well, he'd be the base of your tree that they talk about, your academic tree.
Yeah, perhaps, because also Bitterman too. Because Bitterman again was very, very famous. But Bitterman was, if he had a guest, or if the university had a guest in Hawaii, they had many people come over there, and he didn't like that person, you were not even allowed to talk to that person or take a class with that person. And I remember one case, Sue Brandon, she was one of his students. They disagreed on something, some trivial thing. So then he said, right before her defense, that I'm not going to be your advisor anymore. Her defense is like a week or so away. But he was so university disliked that she was able to find other committee members to replace him. And he was around for many, many years. I don't think, I'm probably one of a handful of PhD students that ever finished with him. But then my students, you can say, well, Bitterman is part of their own lineage.
Yeah. Well, along the way, you've worked so much. What would you do for fun, to relax, that type of thing?
Just sit at home and do nothing, and just think.
About work?
Yeah, just some books. I want to start writing historical novels.
Oh, okay.
So I want to start getting, slowing down with this.
Sure.
But I'm not sure I can, because everything that I've ever earned, I've earned from this. I've written 17 books, and some of them are odd. I'm always looking for opportunities. For example, when I first went to Slovenia, there was no Slovene phrase book. So I go to Slovenia. I'm working with this person, the one who ran the animal facilities. She was going through a divorce, had problems, needed money. So I said, let's do this phrase book. So we wrote a Slovene English phrase book that became so popular it was translated into German and Italian, and now there's a second English edition. I wrote a book about my alcohol studies called Betty the Boozing Bee. I did an electron microscopy, Alice of the Africanized honeybee. My latest book is an edited volume with a former student here on Psychology Gone Astray, a selection of the early racist and sexist literature in psychology. And there's a lot of it. There's a lot of it. So then I thought of, I guess the next book, I'm part of the library project where we're writing free textbooks. So I'm doing one on comparative psychology. So that'll probably be the next one. Then I really would like to start doing the historical novels.
We do a chapter or two on Phi Beta Kappa. That experience. Someone's probably written a book on the history of
Oh, I donated it.
at various
Yeah.
institutions along the way too. Kind of like that timeline.
Yep. And I feel better being at OSU with nothing else for the Phi Beta Kappa, because you in my view, you really can't be at an institution called an intellectual institution without it being related to Phi Beta Kappa somehow.
But that wasn't a reason for you not to come back when you came in '93. We didn't have one.
I was shocked, and I'm sure I just assumed that it was, like many people did. And then when I started learning about the problems they had over time, like faculty members writing the national office, saying you shouldn't have a chapter here. A lot of people were not on the same page. But over time, with Perry and with some of the others, they were able to get people on the same page. And I'm proud of the university. I look around and see all the construction projects. Many universities are having problems building. OSU is building things all over the place. A new art center announced today. The business college is going to be expanding. Human sciences, nice new building. Very, very impressive. Very impressive. And OSU earned the right to be a chapter, to be a member of Phi Beta Kappa. And I'm glad that they finally recognize that.
We've covered a lot. Is there anything else you want to
Yeah.
add?
No, I just hope it's not boring, because it is, it is an odd story.
It is very odd, and then there's probably more you could tell.
Yeah. Because sometimes I feel bad that some people are, I don't know about afraid of me, but I am blunt, and I'm really goal directed. Other things like personality differences, I don't care. It's the goal that makes a difference. Right? To get the job done. Right? And as I said, I never look at reference letters. I had a graduate student, had 11 papers with me, just graduated. Some people didn't like me as the way he looked. I don't care. What difference does it make the way someone looks? All right? Or they're this or they're that. It's their ability to get the job done that counts, and that's what I look for. They don't want to be insulting, that kind of thing, but most people aren't. You don't go out of your way to hurt somebody. Call them names or whatever it is, but because of the way someone looks or the way they speak, what difference does it make? And if they want to get an academic job, they're going to have to shape up anyway. Like he did. He had he shaved, and so on. Right? People aren't stupid.
Well, have you run into trouble with Abramson as a last name?
Not so much the last name, but my initials are Charles Ira. My initials are CIA, Charles Ira Abramson. So I get into a lot of problems with that. And then I think I'm on some watch list, because when I went to Colombia recently, I got detained. Venezuela, I got detained. And it all started with Venezuela. I don't like making trips from country to country and then going back. You got differences in money. You know, Europe's a different story because of the European Union. So I had to go to Venezuela first, and then to Brazil, then back to Venezuela. So people in Brazil wanted me to bring certain kinds of flour back for them. An Indian couple, they shipped some, I don't remember what it was, some kind of flour. So I'm about to go on the airplane from Venezuela to Brazil. I get arrested. And they put me in, I didn't know the airports had jails. So they said I was transporting cocaine. It wasn't. It was just, Venezuela, has a lot of problems now. They stole all my gifts, except the ring that I had for my wife, almost 2 carats, internally flawless, diamond engagement ring. I kept it on me, but they took everything else, the crystal, so on. Then they eventually put me back on the airplane, and I guess they thought they were going to intimidate me. I'm not that easily intimidated. So eventually they put me back on the plane, and then I was able to do what I had to do. And then before that, when I first came to Oklahoma, I didn't have a car, and I lived off Jardeau around McElroy. So I'd walk in every day and walk back. Occasionally people would give me lifts. So on 2 occasions I would get a lift to go down that hill on McElroy, and they would ask me, what are you doing here? I'm a professor, what church I belong to. Well, I'm Jewish. They stopped the car and had to get out. Happened twice.
Wow.
But so what? People are people. There are others that makes no difference at all. But you can't let those kind of things bother you, right? Bother you to the point where you can become incapacitated, and you get angry all the time. People got their views, so what? You want to persuade them, or you don't want to legislate. Right? If you have a chance to persuade people, do it that way. Right? Not force them into things, because you always have a backlash. And nobody can force me to do anything. I will refuse. I will refuse. And then my wife is funny. In Brazil, there was a list that came out of the top 50 crime-ridden cities in the world. Brazil has 21 of them. And most of those are places where I've been to. So she says, honey, Charles, you got to be careful because you can get attacked. And I tell her, I laugh because you know me for our 10th anniversary is April 6th. It's the other way around. Right? It's the other way around. Because I got all these things built up over the years that it's like I learned from the honeybees. Don't bug me, I won't bug you. Right? I don't mind discussion, but don't force me to do something I don't want to do because I'm not going to do it. Now, you got to persuade me, then it's a different story. Because I could be wrong. I've been wrong. I guess a couple of times that I can remember. But my living is a prediction and control of behavior, so I can spot a bullshitter a long way off. Right? Because this is what I do for a living. I'm not in the helping profession, and that's why I say even with the students. Don't complain if you don't learn. Don't complain about the professor stinks. It's your behavior that's the problem. You can learn just as much from a bad professor, as long as the professor's competent. Right? That's a different story. They shouldn't be here if they don't know what they're supposed to be teaching. There's nothing wrong with you picking up another book, or going to some video, or going to office hours. So on. Like, how many people you think in the course I teach now come to office hours? I got a class of 36. I don't think 3 people come in here. Right? And you ask them, you almost beg them, this is what you're supposed to do. They don't want to do it. Yet they have the right to evaluate you, which I think is outrageous. And I think that should be changed. At least the course evaluations should ask questions like, how often do you come to class? You ever go to office hours? How often do you study? They don't ask that. So as far as I'm concerned, these things are totally invalid. It's always, in my view, like blame the professor. Right? Never, gee, why don't you study a little bit harder? Because if you don't, you're going to have a problem. Unless you're independently wealthy, your parents, you're going to live with your parents or something. And they don't want you there either. Right? They want you to be independent. You got to be able to think for yourself. Slogans, they're being manipulated by slogans is not what you're supposed to be learning here. Right? And this is what I think is, unfortunate overall. That's why I thought I'd retire. But now, now I can't. Because it hasn't happened here as much, but it does happen here. But other places, much, much more.
Sounds like you have too much more to contribute to retire. It's too early.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, because sometimes you get really depressed. Right.
Well, that's when you take a trip.
Yeah.
How many different languages do you speak?
Well, I used to, probably just bad English now, but it used to be Russian, German, Sanskrit was the one I learned in college. And when I went to college, which again, I just don't understand, we had to learn 2 languages at Boston University. You had to pass these language tests. Now people are getting rid of language.
For your undergrad?
With the graduate school, also for undergraduate,
Graduate.
you had to have the language is German.
Mm.
In grad school, we had to have 2. And now it's all, it's all, let's get rid of language.
Mm.
Or things like, all the fees that the students have to pay. Why can't there be a fee? Excuse me, why can't there be a fee, $5, $10, for a general fund for kids to go overseas, to help them defray the costs of their international trips? Excuse me. Because there's a grass feeding. I think there's all other kinds of things. Why don't they have a fee like this that can benefit almost every student on campus? OSU wants to have all our students have international experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but who's going to pay for it?
True.
Right? And Oklahoma's not the richest state, so there's got to be some help here. And some people are trying to do that, but then let everybody contribute towards it, because it's something like that help benefits the university. And
When you do travel, students go with you,
oh yeah, but yeah,
or at least a few.
oh yeah. Like we just came back from a spring break class to Spain. I think I mentioned that earlier, looking at Islamic contributions to science, and there's a lot of it, which most people don't know. So I think we brought 7 students. It's explorations in the history of psychology. Before that, it was we've been to Greece was the first, then it was Austria, Czech Republic. What else? Moscow last year, and Spain. And then next year, I think it'll be. I wanted Devil's Island, right? But people talked me out of it. I thought it'd be really interesting to go where they, where you lock people up like that. You think of Dreyfus, and other prisoners there. But now they're saying, well, I don't think we're going to get a lot of students there. So now it might be Florence or Venice.
And they spend a good chunk of their time in an archive, or what? Doing what?
There's always going to be some psychology component.
Right.
And I do this course myself with the undergraduate advisor. I don't palm them off on some international tour agency, right? Because if I don't know the material, then I shouldn't be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I always make contact with a university in that area where we're going, and we don't travel to different cities. We stay at one place, and then know that one place well.
Mm.
So I think if you're going to go to Florence, it'll start being the psychological importance of the Renaissance.
Okay.
And again, if you read, you increase your knowledge base. I can easily palm them off on some educational tour agency, but I don't do that.
Mm.
I prefer to do it myself. And then I bring the undergraduate advisor, which I guess I could be the only one that does that, because we have 2 of them, but the one that I work with I've known for a long time. And the undergraduate advisor, they should be included on these trips, because they advise the undergraduates, right? So again, I do things that may be a little bit different than most.
Well, of all the places you've been, are there some place on your bucket list that you've got to go? You haven't been yet?
No, I like it. I like them all. I like them all. But again, I would like to go to. I've been to the Philippines, I've been to Japan, did some work there. But I would like to go to Vietnam, Cambodia, or places like that.
Mm.
But I can't do it on a spring break trip because it takes so long to get there. And I can't do it over the summer because I'm committed 5 years for this grant in Turkey.
I read somewhere you were doing experiments with cinnamon.
Yeah, that was in Venezuela. And I took some kids, that was also an NSF REU program. So I took kids to Venezuela, and I was working with this professor. Because, you know, some people go to conferences. I don't really do that. I mean, I don't have an interest. If I have an interest in someone's work, I invite them to come to OSU, or I go there, or send students there. So this guy was a researcher in Venezuela, and he came out here to work with me. And then I went back with him to Venezuela, and we discovered that cinnamon, exposure to cinnamon, disrupts the life cycle of the insect that transmits Chagas disease, the parasite. So now people are using cinnamon around their houses, and it only affects poor people. So these guys were shocked when I come in there. I didn't let the students go in there because you get the parasite not through a bite like a mosquito, like malaria. You get it through the feces. And then these bugs, they live in the thatched huts on the roofs. So you go in there, they go to the bathroom on you, it's incurable. So I keep them outside while I would go inside. And the villagers were like shocked that a student would even be around, and not to mention a professor. And I had one of them, she has her PhD now. She got real sick. She was thin anyway. And I'll never forget this. She didn't quit. So she got real sick. She throws up. The place is filthy, this shopping area. She grabs some dirty newspaper, wipes her mouth, and continues on. That was just great. Right? I mean, that's great. And now, she has her PhD. She has a great career in public health service. And one village we went to, they spent all day trying to cook this special meal for us, and it was some sort of rat. And Waylon can eat anything. But Mia, this woman, name was Mia, was looking at me, because I knew it was a rat, I didn't tell him. And she knew something was up, but I wouldn't tell. But Waylon was 1 second, this rat. And they could see the chop on the tail. So, a lot of experience like that. Also, I was in a riot in Venezuela. The fellow that I was with was pro-Chavez, and they have rockets and all sorts of fights and battles and stuff. We're right in the middle of that. So now I worry about that because taking students to Turkey, and it might be the same thing if the government gets overthrown. But they're experiences. I tell some of the students, I can get killed, or you can get killed by some jerk on a cell phone, driving, right, not paying attention to what they're doing. Right? At least you have, a spirit of adventure. This is when I was a kid, parents would encourage that. Now everybody seems to be worried about everything. Can't do this, can't do that. There's no rules that say this is what you can do. To encourage people, it's always what you can't do. You can't say this, you can't write that, you can't think this way, you can't think that way. We can't have free thought. I think many people will tell you that in some universities, the last place you find free speech is the university campus. Mm-hmm. Safe zones, this, trigger warnings, and then these people are supposed to go out in the real world and actually engage in the contingencies the environment offers, and these contingencies are not always positive. Probably far from it. It's very mostly negative.
If someone says can't to you, you say, let's see.
Right, yeah, let's see. And sometimes I'm sure other professors feel the same way. In fact, I tell some people, especially the students, take a look at the original version of All Quiet on the Western Front. It was, I think, in the early 30s, a German anti-war movie because of World War I. And it starts off some kids in a classroom, everybody's gung-ho about fighting the French. So then you see what happens to them over the time. And one person I ended up working with is a guy he's some sort of sergeant. Name could have been Sergeant Schultz, which is, I think that's where they got the name for the Hogan's Hero character. Okay. And this guy realized he's sending these kids out there with no training, and I feel the same way. I just send them out there with no training, and they're going to be in debt. One case I remember, I told this student, if you don't take what you do seriously, you're going to have a big problem. You're not going to find a decent job. So about a year later, I'm on that Cimarron Turnpike, and there's a McDonald's there. So I walk in there, I hear this scream. Excuse me, it was her. She saw me first. She couldn't get a job, she works at McDonald's. Because she didn't take what she did seriously. You ever teach a class here? You'd be lucky if half of them show up. And I'm not a big technology user. I don't use PowerPoints very much. You're paying for my experience. Show up to class. If you can't, come here office hours, or I can meet you anytime. But you got to make the effort, and you can only make the effort. I can only meet them 49% of the way. Some people say, well, if you got to meet them halfway, they got to do that extra 1% that you can build upon, and that's what I try to do. You know, encourage them.
Well, have other of your students gone on to become similar to you?
Yeah, I think so. I think quite a
of
few.
the behavior psychologists?
Yeah, and they try to help students as well. Yeah. I've got a few that are in universities. The first 4 I got rid of. They all had their masters with me, but I just couldn't sign any of their PhDs. I think 6 overall never finished with me. Because I'm looking for a particular kind. I'm not in the business of just giving out a degree.
Right.
When I got mine, I'm sure a lot of the older faculty would be the same thing. You were never guaranteed a PhD. You were guaranteed the opportunity, but it's up to you to take advantage of it. And if you didn't, you were tossed out. Bitterman, I remember him telling us that when you have your comprehensive examinations, you viewed it as an athletic contest. Only the best people are going to pass. The rest will get their masters, and then off they go someplace else.
Get him a pigeon and a kung fu hat.
Right. Yeah, that pigeon, I still remember. His name was 4-digit.
What's what?
His name was 4-digit.
4-digit?
3759 was his number. Yeah. Yeah. I worked hard, but I had a good time, and I expect the students to do the same. But you got to care about what you're doing. And Phi Beta Kappa is one of those things that it's a nice recognition.
Sure.
And it shows you have breadth of knowledge. And I remember as a student, I had a lot of friends who were engineering majors and so on. They can talk about maybe 1 or 2 things. I had a breadth of knowledge. And the idea of a liberal arts education is not very much in fashion anymore. But it's really important. Learn how to play an instrument. If I was some administrator at OSU, I would require everyone to learn how to play a musical instrument. Take an acting class. Right? Tell them this is what you need to do. If you want to have a real interesting life.
So do you play an instrument?
I used to play the banjo.
Oh, okay.
It was during the Sex Pistols day, God Save the Queen on the banjo. The James Bond theme was pretty good at. Yeah. I thought that was, I enjoyed that. Yeah.
5-string or 3-string?
It was 5.
5.
Yeah. But the Scruggs picking method, not the hammer claw thing. Yeah. I enjoyed that. Learn how to write, creative writing. I suggested here that every psych major should take an acting class, take a music class. Right? And why an acting class? Well, for me the answer is obvious. At least you can try to put yourself in the other person's shoes. Especially most of them want to be clinical psychologists. What's it like to be, to say something and no one listens to you? Or, to be locked up or shut in and you're afraid to go out of the house? Right? An acting class used to give you some of that experience. Or if you're alone, well, pick up an instrument or draw. Go outside and draw something. Or dare I say, if you're I don't want to say religious, well, if you believe in God, you're never alone. Right? As silly as that may sound to some people, that's something that should be considered too.
Well, all of these things, the art and the music, is that part of Phi Beta Kappa requirements?
Yeah, we want well-rounded individuals. Right? The idea of a liberal arts education, right? Be able to do different things, to appreciate, and that's what my mother taught me. Going to art museums, going to science museums. I went to the ballet. I went to Broadway during what they would call the golden age of Broadway. I saw Zero Mostel and Fiddler on the Roof. Just many things like that. And it gave me appreciation. No matter how bad you might have, go to a museum. Look at great works of art. Go to a library. Snap yourself out of it. And that's when we read a biography of someone or autobiography of someone that had faced terrible odds and was able to succeed. These things are important. I know they sound stupid today, but they're as good today as they were back then. Or you get depressed, you go outside, paint something in Theta Pond, or pick up an instrument, or even a harmonica, just go out there and play with it. Right? or learn to appreciate classical music, learn to appreciate culture through learning the language. And this is what I think we can do a better job of. And this is what, again, for me, Phi Beta Kappa represents. But you got to get people, you got to persuade people that this stuff is important.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I tried to get some departments to, even the university as a whole, you know, they have all these TV monitors.
Mm-hmm.
One simple thing to do is put motivational quotes. Maybe the library can do this. Because everybody gets suppressed, and then you're walking down, maybe at that exact psychological moment, you see some uplifting quote by Martin Luther King or Will Rogers, and then you can have the state, as a project, pick the quotes that can be used on these monitors. Yeah. I mean, the idea of uplifting the spirit, and this is again what I think Phi Beta Kappa does. You know, it's not just grade point average. It's the idea that you know you've reached a certain level where you can make a difference. You know?
Well, to get in Phi Beta Kappa, it's just grade point, or do you do
No,
an interview?
I don't think the interview, but it's a well-rounded coursework.
They look at the transcript, not
Oh,
necessarily
for
the
sure.
grade.
Yep.
Okay.
And if you look at the people who were Phi Beta Kappa members, you know, it's Supreme Court justices, presidents, Paul Robeson, you know, very famous singer, Phi Beta Kappa. You know, the list goes on. Helen Keller. The list goes on and on and on and on. So that you're a member of a really select group of people, which also, you know, it's nice.
You're more up to date on films and stuff. Is it mentioned in those currently as much as they were?
I don't really
when you
see
were
many
back?
movies anymore.
Oh, you don't?
You know, and we don't have a TV. I had one for 20 years. I have no cell phone. So in that sense, I'm pretty divorced.
Well, I would imagine it's not as much in them as they were back when they
Right
were
back
younger.
then, yeah. Because even some people on their tombstones would say Phi Beta Kappa.
Really?
Because it was such a big deal.
So it'll be on yours.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought I showed you my Abramson action figure, so I thought maybe if I get cremated, I can put myself in these various action figures and give them to students who go around different parts of the world, you know, take photographs with it. But we'll see.
Yeah.
All right, we'll see. But it's I've had a good time overall.
It's been a good path.
Yeah, it's been a good path.
Bumpy some, but
Yeah, because it could have been a lot different.
yes.
Could have been a lot different.
You just wonder how it came out so positive for you with all these roadblocks along the way.
I worked for it, and I knew, you know, sometimes you lose battles, but I knew I was never going to lose the war.
But something had to make you want to do that.
Being driven.
Yeah.
Driven.
Driven, but
Yeah. I mean, really. So I remember some guy that I met at the World Trade Center. He says, Charles, you know, if you're here being a security guard for 2 years, you're going to be here forever. And I was there for 2 years, but not 2 consecutive years, and I can understand what he was saying. Because, you know, at that time it was $2.02 an hour was the minimum wage. But you had time to read and do all sorts of things, you know. It was easy. It was easy. But sometimes things in life, you need to work for it. But I knew I would never be a failure.
Do you know the moment when you decided that? When you think back, at what point did you decide, okay,
Well, when you're getting beaten,
yes.
as a child, you got two choices: either accept it or fight back.
Okay.
And I remember when they had Two-Ton Tony tried to hit me. I remember the day that I could tell you exactly when I changed. I must have been about, say, 10. I'm in Florida Air Academy, and I was a quiet kind of kid. But they tried to have Two-Ton Tony. It's funny how you remember these names. Tried to sit on me. So they had him chase me around a pillar, and then I stopped. And I hit him so hard, he just ran into my fist. I knocked him out, teeth went flying. And then, much to my surprise, they left me alone. And that's when I learned you have to stand up for your rights.
Okay.
You got to stand up for your rights. And I remember, not like I dwell on it, but I certainly remember these key events. So I thought of writing a book called 6 Significant Events in Your Life.
Yes. I think you should.
Yeah, because I remember that one. That was probably the first. Then, say Marcosella, coming to OSU, because that's where I met Italo Aquino. From there I met Zena. Then, I did all this international stuff just from Brazil. And I'm sure there's a few others that I just don't recall at this point. But I always can appreciate Henry Marcus Seller for giving me the chance. And that's what I try to do to everybody here. But you get one chance. Take advantage of it. Because I'm not a babysitter. Right? If you got a problem, just tell me. Right? I only ask 4 things of my students. Don't lie because I'll know. Right? Do what you say you're going to do. Before you ask me to give you an answer, try to figure it out for yourself. Right? And show up on time. Those are the 4 things. That's all that I ask. If you don't know something, that's fine. No problem. But at least try to figure it out for yourself before you ask me.
Well, those 4 things would be good going forward with them too once they're off campus.
Yep.
Future.
Right. Because, I have kids that show up late. This time I'm a little bit relaxed on that rule because I teach an 8 o'clock class. And it's very difficult for some kids to get up. But when I teach a normal time class, 9:30, whatever, nobody shows up late. Because you're not allowed to go in. Unless you have a legitimate excuse. No cell phones either. If the cell phone goes off, you're going to get an F. But if you tell me ahead of time that I'm expecting a call, babysitter, whatever, that's fine. You got to have self-respect. That seems to be the key. And if you don't respect yourself, why would anybody else want to respect you? And the answer is I won't. Right? You're not. It's not my problem. It's your problem. Right? You got to reach my standard. I'm not going to go down to yours. And if you listen to what I tell you, just like Sergeant Schultz, you have a good life. If you don't, you still can have a good life. But I know my way works. Right? When I teach a graduate class, I know many professors would rather have the students, take it over. Right? They give, they'll direct the class. Right? I don't. I want you to know certain things. I'm going to tell you what you need to know, and then it goes on from there. And again, it's different, but I have a different way of doing things, and I think my way works. I can demonstrate that it works.
Over 20 years.
Yeah, other ways may work, but I know my way works. I've had 2 students get NSF Graduate Research Fellowships. They're very hard to do. I got more than my share of grant money. And remember, I know my foundation is weak because I'm a psychologist that studies bugs. So how can I take what I do really that seriously, right? Everything I've ever gotten in my life has been the back of an insect. So that's really you got to be pretty good, right, to do that. I'm in the psychology department where I study bugs.
So at home, do you have a fly swat?
Yeah, I got flies. My wife doesn't like the flies. Yeah,
You just
or the
wonder
wasps.
if that's your business. Do you go kill the ones you don't want in your house and such?
I try to move them out, but she will try to kill them. But she is flexible. Like the wasps, I have hundreds and hundreds of wasps around the property, and she lets me keep them there. And then at the bee colonies almost, because when the dairy bar building was eliminated, I had to move them to my house. OSU would let me put them on some buildings here, but I needed a flat roof, and most people don't realize that many of the roofs at OSU are not flat. So I was going to put them on the PIO building, but I'm just getting too old to climb up and down ladders, and I can't. I'm not allowed to have the students do it, and I wouldn't want them anyway to do it in case something happens. So I keep them at my house, and then one day, like I'm talking to you, a honeybee flies up my wife's nose, and she, like me, because of our backgrounds, you don't panic. So luckily she didn't, and I was able to talk her through it, and then she got the bee out of her nose. Because she got stung in the nostril, even if you're not allergic, that can cause major problems.
Well, how would you get one out?
You gently blow it out, and then, but not really strong, right? Make it sort of like an irritant to it, and then eventually turn her out and it came out.
Huh.
But it was like, I'm looking right at you. Then another time I had a reporter there, and then she's standing from the bee colony. She gets stung near the eye. She got stung right over here. Another millimeter, she would have got stung in the eye. So again, you got to be careful.
Do you harvest the honey?
Yeah, I call it beware honey. And I give it. I can give you a jar. I give it out to people for free.
Do the comb or leave the comb?
I like to leave the comb in there. Let them do it.
Have you ever done anything with tarantulas? Because there's
Many,
quite
many
a
years
few
ago.
of those here.
Yeah, many, many years ago. And it's just hard. The laboratory's small, though. I'd like to express my appreciation to the dean. I was able to get, and Vandenbush, I was able to get a small research space in the new Bellman building. So I appreciate that. And sometimes you wonder what I could do if I had a bigger space, more people. But everybody needs space.
Well, bigger space means more time.
Yeah, but then
To-
also you get more students. Like I have a student
That's
coming
true.
over in this Spain trip. I'm starting to get back into behavior of plants. So I met a student there, and the professor that's going to spend time at OSU in January for 6 months, working on this plant project. Then I have somebody now from Columbia on sabbatical here, part-time here and part-time at University of Tulsa. I got some more people coming down Sunday for the engineering meetings, and then some Brazilians coming down for the robotics competition. So I always got something that I'm working on, and the students enjoy it. You're able to meet people of world-class quality.
Sure.
In New York, I always had a lot of visitors, if nothing else, because it was New York,
Yeah.
and you miss those conversations. And at OSU, Oklahoma in general, nobody comes here because they're passing through. They come here for specific reasons. So, at least now I'm getting more and more of these visitors, so the students can interact with them. They give guest lectures, so on. So I think that that works out well too.
And now if they ask, you can say we have a Phi Beta Kappa
That's right.
if these guests.
Yeah. Yeah, my son was disappointed because he's an engineering major at OSU, so he can't do Phi Beta Kappa. He was from Brazil, right? Now he looks at himself as a U.S. Citizen, which I felt a little bit bad about because Brazil's a nice country with a lot of good people there.
Well, if there's something comparable to Phi Beta Kappa that he could
They have an engineering honor society, so I think he's going to be part of that.
also that.
But again, it's not like everybody knows Phi Beta Kappa. Well, at least in the world that I came from, they did.
Well, if he took a few more classes outside of engineering,
No,
No,
because his
it's
major's
still not.
engineering.
It has to be,
Liberal
okay.
arts, yeah. It'll never be. You'll never have enough courses. Unless it gets a dual major, but it's time to move on.
So if someone had a university studies degree and had all these rail-rounded classes, they still wouldn't qualify necessarily?
That would be something that would be brought up with us, and I would see why not.
Mm-hmm.
If they're taking a wide range of liberal arts classes, and the grades are good, they then volunteer activities, other kinds of things outside the classroom.
So some of those things are flexible
Yeah.
within the chapter or the national level?
Yeah, there's certainly standards, but there is some flexibility as well.
Okay.
Like there was some question that we had when we asked a student to become a Phi Beta Kappa member, and they refused. Can we ask them again? So I think we voted that we can. Other places, they say you don't accept it, that's it.
Or can they change their mind and come back and say yes?
As far as we're concerned here, the answer is
Yes.
yes. Right.
They don't have to be asked again, but if they decide.
But I think
I
that
wish I had.
well, again, we don't know. But my guess is that I think we would say yes.
Yeah.
But it had to be discussed among the officers. But my personal opinion, I don't see why not.
If they met the requirements to
Right.
begin with.
That's right. Because we're not it's not a business. Once you reach that level, it's not like you say no. It's not like you all of a sudden you're somehow dragged back. Right? You reach that level, and you should be recognized for it.
And it becomes a negative if you say no.
I don't know about a negative, but
negative reflection.
it's more that we don't understand why,
Mm-hmm.
and then we realize that in this part of the country, there's so many honor societies now, and I guess Phi Beta Kappa really never had much of a presence in this part of the country. But we hope that'll change.
Well, by negative, I meant if the chapter said no. If they asked if they could, after they had said no, that would be a negative on the chapter itself.
Oh, on the chapter, yeah. On the chapter. I would think so. And I remember, can never understand why OU has a chapter. Tulsa University has a chapter, and we don't. We're as good, if not better than they are. And I know that bugged a lot of us.
And if they hadn't passed this time, would they have gone again, in your opinion?
I would like to, I'd like to think so, but there certainly was discussion that, by some of the committee members, give it up. Because, what more can you do? Right? President Hargis, had a big influence. We got all the material that they needed. We have one of the officers, the national office, was associated with OSU either through the father or both. So everything was in place. And if we didn't do it this time, what more can you do? Right? So I think there would still be some of us going for it again, but others would say, we've had enough. Because nobody wants to hit their head against the wall. I don't. That's one reason why I became a comparative psychologist. So you block me one way, I'll go around another. Because I focus on the goal.
Well, you accomplished this one.
Yeah,
You helped accomplish this one.
Yeah, and I'm really pleased. Also, again, thank you for your help with this oral history project. So I think that, if I do anything with being the chapter historian, it's this. That people can see this, from years and years and years. Also, again, my name Abramson, so it begins AB, and you look at the charter that's in the Arts and Sciences building. Who's the first name? I get a lot of criticism for that, because like on book chapters and stuff, you see Abramson usually comes first.
Whether you did the most work for it or not, right?
All right, but that's the way it goes.
Sure. CIA.
Right, CIA. Yeah, the Russians really are a problem with that. But also, if I was an FBI agent or a CIA agent, and there was a Russian with the initials KGB, sure, I'd check him out or her out, because you never know.
Yeah.
Right? You never know.
I guess you could legally change your middle initial or something.
That's IRA. Then I had problems in Italy.
Oh.
Irish Republican Army. So they were wondering about that too. And being detained most recently in Colombia was really, they put you in a locked room with no windows, and that I didn't like. I was there for about an hour, and nobody spoke English. My Spanish is broken Spanish, broken Portuguese, and then I finally complained so much that they just let me out. That's what I think happened. But that was so I think I'm on some list, that really bugs me, because I'm always getting stopped. Yeah, I got like a 7 out of 10 chance of getting stopped, pulled over, bag searched, and so on. And so that's why I think I'm on some. I could be paranoid. I'm a psychologist, right? But I don't think so. I think it's something real.
Then you have to definitely make sure you're aware of what's in your bags.
Oh yeah.
And what you're taking from one to the other.
Yeah. When I first went to Russia, it was communist. And one of the people I worked with, she wanted me to bring back one of her crayfish, because they could not use, the only crayfish they're allowed to experiment on were communist crayfish, meaning crayfish from communist countries. So she gave me a crayfish to bring back to the United States to set free. So I did. And if you would ask me, what, if I have you asked me about, like a favorite country or favorite experience, I like them all, but if you were to ask me what would be my favorite experiment, I would say it's not so much the experiment, it's the people you meet along the way. Right? And that's what I think is important. That's why language skills, right? The qualities of someone who's a Phi Beta Kappa, your broad background, being able to speak on various topics, well read, able to solve problems. I'm not saying you can't do that with other things, but that certainly is one recognition that you, at least at a certain time in your life, these are the things that you did. You can do it. You'll be able to know a culture by the language. And again, if I was OSU, I would require everyone to learn the language. Right? Everyone should take an art class. Everyone should take a should take a music class, right? To appreciate these things, to appreciate some of the best parts of life. Like, I'm sure you do, I know I do. You go to a ballet, you go to an opera, you see these voices. It's just incredible. It's a human experience. Mm-hmm. And again, these are the things that I think Phi Beta Kappa tries to enhance in people, and recognize that you've reached a certain level where you can appreciate these things. And I think that's very important. Or the idea of motivational quotes. I mean, everybody gets down. But then you say you're depressed about something, you walk by, and all of a sudden the screen pops up and it has some sort of quote. Right? And then you lift, your spirit gets lifted up. And then you go back at it. Right? You don't get crushed by it, which a lot of people do. They use it as a crutch.
It could even be a quote from some of these oral histories.
Yep, right. And how much does it take to press a few buttons to put a motivational quote on one of these monitors? It can't be that hard, but they put other things on it. And this is what I like, if you're an administrator, if you can't persuade people, order it, do it. You just what you're going to do,
Mm-hmm.
right? And if you want the reasons, well, come over and I'll explain it to you. Right? If you don't understand why, motivational quotes are important, and then you get the whole state involved in selecting the quotes. It'll be a nice statewide project. But then you say these things. Well, you're an idiot. You don't understand. We can't. We're too busy. What are you really too busy doing? Watching a TV show, right?
Well, even the Library of Congress has those all over the place.
Oh, do they?
I mean, they have quotes from over the archways and that type of
When
thing.
I gave a lecture at Morehouse University, and they had quotes from all sorts of Booker T. Washington, Paul Robeson, Martin Luther King. It makes a difference, And how much could it be to chisel in, a quote on a building? I think we seem to lose sight of that. So again, Phi Beta Kappa helps you focus on what, I think are some of the more important issues.
Do you keep a running list of your favorite quotes?
Yeah, I have a whole bunch because I hope one day to try to convince someone to put it on the screen.
I'll have to try to start one of those too.
Yeah, and I have all sorts of books here with motivational quotes, and I haven't done it this semester, but I try to put it on every new section. I put up a quote on the board. So when they're going over their notes, and they see this quote, they're tired of studying or they don't understand something, they see this, and then maybe to give them more impetus to keep on going.
Sounds like another experiment, behavior psychology.
Yeah, because it's not that hard to motivate people. You have to want to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you can only meet them 1%. You can only meet them 49%. They got to give that extra 1%. And I understand all the fancy teaching things they have, but teaching really hasn't changed. You got to have a motivated student, and you got to have some access to information, whether it's from the teacher or whether it's from a book or some other kind of medium. Right? There's no magic, to it. You don't have to want it. You just have to want to teach. And I think, again, in my life, that's probably one of the biggest gifts I can give people is, to help them reach their potential. And that's what I try to do. But I'm not, as you can tell, I'm not a happy, smiling kind of guy. Though I can tell you what muscles I move when I smile. Right? So yeah, I got that down. I got to practice in the mirror. But just give an honest effort, especially at a place like OSU, because it's in not a rich state, and OSU is a land grant college, so it has a special mission. Mm-hmm. Well, we need to acknowledge that. When I went to Boston University, the president at the time I think it was his second year, was John Silver, and he was mentioned. He's dead. He ran for governor of Massachusetts. But he got every student, every freshman, as many as he could, I think it even was required, into this auditorium. And he said, he told us, this is what's expected of you at this university. I think they should do that here. I've been trying to get the department head to do something like that. That as a psych major, this is what's expected of you. If you can't do it, you're going to have problems. Right? Either go someplace else, or stop your training and then come back when you're ready to learn. But come to class, show up on time, take advantage of the professors, use the library, take advantage of the research courses, whatever. Be the best you can be and do it every day. And I think everybody here needs to get that message. But they're not getting the message. And so there's things that I would do, but they'll never let me ever be an administrator. I know that.
By choice.
I think, well, I don't know if I have they think I don't have the temperament.
Mm-hmm.
I probably don't, but so what? I mean, the message, these messages are clear. You do what you're supposed to do. You can have a good life. You can be educated. Don't waste it. You see so many of these kids just wasting their education. I'll be 60 years old soon. How many years I have left? 20? Maybe even less, probably less, to be productive. You'd be able to travel out of cane, and stuff like that. It goes by fast. You may not believe that, but it does. After a certain point, you say, well, where did all the time go? I've been here 23 years. It's amazing. And it's gone by really fast.
Have you had to move during those 23 years?
Just twice.
Just twice.
I had an office down there, and then I moved here. And this is one of the bigger offices. I've earned it. Because, we compete over phones, offices, it's just terrible. Because, you look at animals, what do animals compete over? Any limited resource, whether it's access to females for reproduction or food or whatever. The same thing here. You compete over limited resources. But if we all work together, it'll be, and respect each other's views and have diversity of opinion and viewpoints, I think it would be a better world.
And the colony won't collapse.
And the colony won't collapse. That's right. And I've made have some very good colleagues here. All of the university. Besides being a psychology professor, one of my proudest achievements here is also, besides Phi Beta Kappa, is also being a professor adjunct in the zoology department, and also in the entomology department. So I look at myself as an old-time professor. All right, so I'm more of a generalist than I am, something really specific. I look for universals, rather differences too. But I'm always impressed by how much we're similar than the differences. We're all taught that the differences are more important than the similarities. I just don't buy it. I think it's the similarities that we should be focusing on. Like people, most people want to have, have a good future for their children. There's like at least 100 similarities that we all have in common. And these things are never celebrated. It's just the differences, and some of these differences are phony, in my view. You wear this versus that. Okay. But the basic underlying principles would be the same. You want to improve yourself. You want to be better. Or you want to achieve. That doesn't change. But I would love to be even an administrator for a day, that I had some authority. I can snap my fingers, and just say, this is what's going to happen here.
You probably have 3 or 4 things right off the bat you'd do.
Yeah, that's stuff we mentioned here. Yeah. And when I was a kid, maybe you had the same thing with your parents. I took piano lessons. But then I complained, and they stopped me taking them. Mm-hmm. Boy, I wish I would have kept on the piano lessons. Right? The same thing here. You got to show that you can play an instrument. It could be harmonica, kazoo, it doesn't matter. But you got to have some musical appreciation. You got to be able to have some drawing, artistic skills. It's not that hard to draw something. There's plenty of books on how to do it. So at least some appreciation of it. Like I remember I was in France with some students, and going to the Louvre. You see the Mona Lisa, these amazing statues. The kids that went over to Spain with me, they saw just the architecture and how this stuff was done in the mosque and the churches. You go, wow. I've had some students here that have never even heard of Vienna. You go, something, we're not doing something. Right? Part of it's us as professors, or me in particular, and part of it is them. We're not getting the message across. Boston University had some relationship with the high schools in Boston. Could do the same thing here. Again, there's many things that could be done, to help the community as a whole. And I tell you this from being a loner, and I can see it. Just being someone that's not a big people person, but I know what to do, just to try to matter to get it done. Like you and I talked about this many times. One of my favorite places, like it is yours, is going to an old bookstore. And they don't even see that. Or going to the library, just looking at all the knowledge, you're surrounded by it. And you say, "Wow, that's really impressive." Mm-hmm. Yeah, just the titles of the books, and just the idea of being in a place that has just so much knowledge around. That's what a university is. But we got to take advantage of it. Not just the professors, but also the students.
A big part of it now is they don't seem to have as much time. They don't seem to have as much time.
Right, but yeah, you know, but what are they doing with their other time?
Exactly.
Right? And just look at the decrease in observation skills. I mean, it's frightening. They spend so much time with the buttons on the phones and not enough looking around.
Yes. Or with things in their ears.
Oh, that drives me nuts. Because what does that mean? That means you're shutting yourself off from the world around you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is really unfortunate. I can see, you know, some sort of instructional tape or something at a particular time, but there's some people around here, even faculty, that they have these things in their ears the whole time. Also, I laugh sometimes because they're going deaf. You know they are because the ear's not made to function that way. And if you don't believe me, all you got to do is when you go in your car, turn on the radio, and then many people turn it up. And then the next morning, when you park your car, you go out, you come back in to start your car up, the radio comes on, it's so loud that you got to turn it down. You're going deaf. As sure as I'm standing here. And then you say, wow, don't you even recognize that? So I try to teach these kids life skills.
Sounds like
Right.
it.
I'm going to teach history of psychology. You know, they took me off that for a while because they were going, I guess, to an online course, which is, again, this a piece of shit. Just terrible. Now, I guess in the fall I'll be going back to teaching in the classroom. So I teach, you know, history of psychology, but not so much the history of psychology as opposed to a love of history. Right? And that's what I really want to, you know, a love of learning. That's a love of Phi Beta Kappa, which is what that represents. So in many ways, it all goes back to the same theme, you know, a liberal arts education, being broad-based. It's good to be, you know, focused also, but not at the expense, in my view, of the broad-based education. I'd also have every student take a philosophy class. There's nothing better than a philosophy class. You know, many of the problems that they think that they're unique have been discussed for 1,000 years. Yeah.
Maybe as a pass-fail.
Yeah, whatever. You know, or maybe let the kids sit in on it, or something. Right? But I think they should be taking an introduction to philosophy class. You know, the great philosophers. You know, again, cross-cultural kinds of courses too. Like today in our comparative class, we're talking about cross-cultural attraction in humans. So for the first time, they were able to see different cultures and how they view attraction. You know, some people thin, some people bigger, some people with, you know, really pasty faces, other people with piercings, and they've never been exposed to that before. But you're at a university, you should be exposed to it. So you know, it does get depressing after a while. Yeah. That's why I thought, you know, I should retire. But then I accepted another graduate student. You know, I would never accept a grad student and then just bail on them, which happens also. Gee, I'm going to go someplace else, and why do you accept this student? I mean, you know, they're like your children, you know, in some sense.
And that's a 4 or 5 year commitment.
Right.
Yep.
Then this grant is 5 years, and if you get another one, you know, that'll be another, you know, 10 years here, 10 or 15. But I would like to, maybe you could make me an administrator for a day. Yeah, and then let me be able to do what I want to do.
With the power to do.
Right, with the power to do it, right, to do things. Yeah. Yeah, and having the staff take classes would be nice.
Sure.
You know, the idea that, you know, university is supposed to be an educator, and it doesn't need to be restricted just to students. You know, I know they do, you know, have some courses, but if a secretary wants to take a course in philosophy, let them take the course. And not everything has to be for the money. Right?
Especially at a land grant.
Right, especially at a land grant school. At Phi Beta Kappa, we pay for all the kids' fees. We don't let them pay. I think if they want, you know, special things, that's up to them, right? But the initiation fee is, I think, you know, we pay for it. And I'd be glad to write a check for several $100. And I paid kids' tuitions here in the past, you know, so on. Because if you see someone that's really trying hard, it makes all the difference in the world. I mean, you want to support that. But I don't know if I don't think all of us do that. all of us do that. And I think sometimes, not so much here, but in other places, they lose sight of the fact of what is a university. What is the goal of a university? It's not to indoctrinate people, it's allow them to explore, their potential, what they can be, and give them a knowledge base to be able to do that. It's not to turn them into little this or little that. I had a Russian colleague come here, and I've worked with him for years, since the 90s, and he was Igor Stepanov, and he was shocked when he came here how many kids that he met wanted to be little communists, right, or socialists. And he got so angry because he said, you don't, he told these, you don't know what it's like living in a system like that. It's okay to spat out these terms, but when you're victimized by it, it's a different story. It's a different story. So again, I don't think, I know I'm not teaching these kids how to think, for themselves. So it's like, like Sergeant Schultz, you just send them out there, and then they're going to have, they'll have lives, but it's not as good as it could be. Again, in my view, right? When's the last time somebody took an art appreciation class, right? Or how about learning how to dance? Right? I mean, that's what I would do. Some of these courses, this is what you do. Because we want you to have a better life, right? We want you to be able to think. There was, and I can go on for hours about this, but just gets frustrated.
Well, you also want them to enjoy, which comes into play with the music and the
Right.
dance,
Yep.
and the art.
Right, in the art. You learn how to appreciate a book instead of selling them all the time, which drives me nuts. Like with Mateus, my son, he wants to sell back some of his engineering books. I'll buy it for you. I'll buy it from you, and then you keep these books, right? You don't sell a book. You keep it. Right? Or when I went to the Pavlov Institute of Experimental Medicine in St. Petersburg, they gave me an original Pavlov. I'm looking right at it, and you see in the margins all the notes that this person wrote down. Or you don't see that much anymore. Or when I taught, I teach a lot in third world countries, developing countries. These kids will die for an education. Literally, here, in some cases they waste it. Not all, but even if it's one too many. And I can tell you, from my experience, it's a lot more than just one. So again, I think overall, Phi Beta Kappa, if we can make it more known around the university, it would help. Right. But they got to know it as when they're even in high school or freshmen. And when they have their, I don't know if they do this, when they have the application packets, they should have something about Phi Beta Kappa in here.
Early on.
Yeah, early on. Right. And all the undergraduate advisors should know, because of that language requirement. I know there's a move in some departments to reduce the language requirement. But then, how can you do that and say, gee, we want our kids to have international experiences. We want our kids to, to appreciate, reading Cervantes in the original Spanish, right, as opposed to, some English version. But we don't. Some of us don't. They'll push that. Don't recognize that, I guess, or they feel that they're anything that they say is just going to be like waters off a duck's back. To some administrator.
Well, some of those issues will Phi Beta Kappa take on?
I hope, but again, that's what I hope. But it's the same. Some people don't make waves, right? Don't do this, don't do that. It's never take a chance. And I've wanted taking chances all my life, because you have to do that. I remember when I left BU, people thought I was crazy to go to Hawaii, because I may add more time to my degree, but I didn't care. If you want to work, if you want to be the best, you should work with the best, even though this guy was very difficult. And in the end, it all worked out. It worked out better than anybody could have hoped. Again, I've never had a day of unemployment. Never had the endless round of postdocs that some people have, especially these days. In the biological sciences, it's hard to get a job at a place like OSU, as opposed to like a smaller school. But even that now is becoming more difficult. They expect you to have one or two postdocs. So by the time you are ready for your first university job, you could be 35, 40 years old. And that's not good either. Look at all the unemployed, PhDs and college kids that are going home living with their parents. I don't think their parents want them there. They struggle for so long. They want a break. My wife is Brazilian, and she thought, like many of them do, that the children will live at home until they're 50. She now realizes, as soon as he graduates, he's going to start his life. If you're going to go to grad school, that's fine. If you're going to get a job as an engineer, that's fine too. But you got to start your life. You can't be baby. I'm glad that she said that, because I was hoping that she would say that. But it's a mother's son. You cannot get in between that. Because not everybody had my experiences. When I got just tossed out of there.
And I keep picturing you laying on the ground at 10, looking up the sky.
Oh yeah.
I'm thinking,
Yeah,
I'm
like
in
I saw
trouble
it
now.
yesterday. Yeah, just like yesterday. I'm in trouble now. And I remember in the other military school, with Mr. Schultz, the biology teacher, he would say, you got a test in 2 weeks. Okay, start studying. You should get an A. You would not leave that classroom until you got an A. And he'd be there right with you until you got that A on that test. But then you get in trouble because you're wasting his time. But he would be right there with you. And you wonder what happened. Or another guy, can't remember his name, and another, in Cornell Academy, I always had problems spelling enough. E-N-U-F. All right. So he was the same thing,
Enough.
Yeah, it was E-N-U-F. And then he would be right with me, try again. Stern, right? But he gave me the opportunity to figure it out on my own, which is what I do with my students. But then, don't waste the time. Give an honest effort. And so, these little things at the precise psychological moment makes all the difference in the world. And that's what I try to do. And I focus more on the D and F students than I probably do on the A students, because they know it's the D and F students that need the help. But they have to want, they have to want the help. And you're just wasting your time if you're offering help and they're not ready to accept it. It's better to say, the door's open to you. When you're ready, here I am. Don't waste the time.
Any of those DNF students become star pupils?
Yeah, I've got people that cry, they end up with a C in my class because they're so proud that they got that C. And I'll meet them anytime, anywhere. But, I'm not going to beg you to help you. Right? You're going to have to want to do it.
And some take you up on your offer?
Right.
Some do?
Yeah. There are others that don't. But then, I said, boy, you think they all should do it. And, you probably maybe do the same thing I do. You drive around Oklahoma, you see all these people with cows. So many people look at the group of cows. I focus on the one that's off in the field by itself. And you say, why is that cow by itself and not with the others? Or why is that student not performing as much as the others will? Something going on in their life that maybe I can help them with. Because sometimes it's just, they can't pay for a course. They got this. It's only money. They can write a check, it's not like I'm poor. And if it's money, that's the simplest thing in the world to solve. Just write a check.
You've
Right.
done that for some.
Yeah, quite a few. Less so now because I'm married. But before, I actually paid people's tuitions. And I'm glad to do it. I'm glad to do it. And one person, I bought a wheelchair. And yeah, there are other things like that. Because you always, just like Marcus Sell did for me, you always want to help someone that's trying to better themselves. Right? You don't want to crush them. And, it's easy to do that. All right? Bug off, get lost, I'm too busy now, leave me alone, I got my own problems. It's easy to say those things. But it's just as easy to say, yeah, come on now, give me a hand. What do you need? You want to visit a laboratory? I put on shows for kids, science shows for kids. It's easy. What does that mean? One less news show you're watching, or one less comic book you're reading, or whatever. You can't spare an hour in your busy day, and no one's that busy. And if you got graduate students or even undergraduates working in your laboratory, train them to do it. Which is what I try to do. Then they can go out there, and then maybe they'll train somebody else, and then soon it snowballs. It's not that hard to do, but everybody's got to be working on the same page, and you can't have little kingdoms and fiefdoms and everything else that people like to do. Right? Nobody knows everything, And again, it depends on the team members. You don't want to, if you're surrounded by losers, I tell me, you become a loser. You're surrounded by people that achieve, you become a person that achieves. In my view anyway, the rules for life are pretty simple.
Sounds like you do what you preach.
Yeah, I try to. In college I was an Oriental religion minor. So I always appreciated religion. They're guides on behavior. Like, is it so wrong to say, hey, thou shalt not kill, or don't want to covet someone else's wife? What is so wrong about that, right? Or some of the other things, do unto others as you would do unto yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are just rules to live by. So I see nothing wrong with that. Or some people's alone, feel they're alone. They're not really alone. If you believe, certain kinds of religions, I get for all of them, whether it's Oriental religions or non-Oriental, you're part of the big picture. Yeah, I can't get in trouble because the last place on earth you get free speech is a college campus, right? I think most people would agree with that. All I got to do is say a couple of sentences, and the next thing I know, I'll get they'll be down in my office, complaining about something. But then that needs to change too. You got to be able to express your views if you're a professor. And I see that's becoming less and less and less. But it could be, being educated is a good thing. You say, you're depressed, take out your kazoo, your harmonica, your guitar, your violin, you're pounding on a desk or something. You're not alone. Or pick up a book. Read about somebody else's triumphs or failures. Right? Read autobiographies and biographies of what people have done. You feel better. I mean, I know it because I've done it. It works. Many people's stories, everybody's got a story, and many, if not most, if not all, are inspiring. Be inspired. Mm-hmm. In the history class, I asked people, ever been inspired by a book? And most of them said no, because they don't read. And if you're going to be a good writer, you got to be a good reader. Mm-hmm. And they go hand in hand. I never thought I'd live to see the day when now we have to use plagiarism software to detect cheating in student papers. Right? I don't do that. I'm going to waste my time. You're going to cheat, feel free. Because in the end, you're going to get it. Because you're not going to know. You're not going to have the knowledge that you need, and your life is going to be crummy. You won't be able to appreciate this or that. And, in the end, cheaters get caught. Mm-hmm. I mean, and you don't fool anybody. So I know some pretty wide-ranging.
But you also are the one that didn't do 2 grades in high school and managed to get.
Yeah, I went to 5 high schools.
Get through.
Yeah, but I knew that it would never be a failure. I mean, how can you complain when you're reading a biography or autobiography of Helen Keller? For all the problem that she had, I'm complaining about being smacked around and my fingers broken. Or you think of some of the veterans of the Vietnam War, when Hanoi, Hilton, and other things, what these people went through. I'm complaining that I didn't get a paper accepted. It's all a matter of perspective. And if you don't have a wide knowledge base, you don't appreciate it, and you get cut off. Right? That's what I hope, that at least Phi Beta Kappa, that you're joining a community of people that feel the same way that you do, that have essentially reach their goals. I don't know if they continue to stay that way, but at least for a certain time in their life, they were able to say, hey, I accomplished something, right, that no one could ever take away, because I can't take this away.
The committee can say that.
Yeah.
The multiple committees, I guess.
But once you're elected Phi Beta Kappa, there's no way to take it away, unless you assume that I guess you cheated your whole life, through the grade process.
Sure.
But I don't think that if that ever happens, it's pretty rare. Yeah. So, hope I didn't bore you.
No.
But
it's been great.
It's a different because I've been part of with the history, and this story is a little bit different, or what we talked about is somewhat different than the others.
Sure.
Because my role in Phi Beta Kappa really wasn't, in the application process, wasn't that great. But it all fits together.
Mm-hmm.
But I enjoyed it, and I'm glad that Barry Gethner overlooked. Like, I would do the same thing. What difference does it make? You don't agree with somebody, as long as they can do the job. That's all that matters. Getting the job done. And he appreciated that.
Sure.
Because I couldn't believe it. I said, man, I can't believe that was Barry Gethner. Because we were very friendly over the emails, right? I had no idea it was him.
Well, did he know it was you? Did he make the connection too?
Maybe later.
Maybe later.
Yeah. Because if I say, hey, but I am right. You're delaying me getting into my class, right? So I'm starting my class late. When I need at least 10 minutes, that 10-minute interval between classes to set up I do a lot of demonstrations. So I need that time. So he was wrong. And then it turns out that, other people said the same thing. But I'm the only one, once again, to be able to say something. All right? Because people don't want to say something. And then again, I felt bad because he ended up moving the class to another place. But when you have a class that seats 50 and you only have 4 or 5 people in there, there's another space that you can use. Mm-hmm. But I did feel again it was awkward. But we became, I don't we're not bosom buddies, but we're friendly, and I appreciate what he does, and I think he appreciates what I do, and more importantly, we respect each other, which I think is the mutual respect, which is important.
Good lesson learned too.
Right. Yeah, I learned that I got to be careful. So I got to look up these people first, right? But I gave every opportunity. I even knocked on the door when it was like 5 of, then it was after. I did all. I didn't just do it right away. I even offered to get him an alarm clock because he said there was no clock in the class. I'll buy you a clock. Right? I did all that, but then in the end, it still didn't happen. Then I got to do something. All right, because I'm not going to be disrespected by anybody.
And then your students may not hang around long enough for the classroom to clear.
But also they see me and they say, here's Dr. Abramson, he's being pushed around. That does not work. I will not be pushed around by anybody, an administrator or anybody. That's not going to happen. Those days are, those 50 years ago. Those days are long over. Long over. Mm. That'll never happen again. Because when I hit that 2-ton Tony in the face and knocked his teeth out, I was shocked. They left me alone, and I'll never forget that day. I still remember. That column, they're having him chase me around. All everybody's laughing, and then I stopped, and I hit him. He goes right into my fist, and then everybody was like, "Wow!" And then I never was, for the most part, never was hassled again. Then I moved to the other place. Then I started having problems. Yeah. And there I learned that reinforcement of rewards are relative, because I started. I was getting into fights all the time over there, all the time. I was being punished all the time. So I was running away all the time. So they agreed with my father that they would only talk to me and interact with me in class. So that meant I marched by myself, I ate by myself. So imagine a corps of cadets, right? And they even had horses. I was actually after the horse group. And one little kid marching. We had parades every Saturday. And they thought that was like the biggest punishment. For me, it was great. Yeah. They left me alone. I could do whatever I want. Right? So again, you learn that you can't treat everybody the same way. You got to know the reinforcement history, because what's the reward for somebody may not be reward for somebody else. Or the reward now may not be the same reward 10 years ago or 10 years hence. Right? So you always got to be careful about that. And that's what you learn as a behaviorist. Behavior counts. Not this cognitive stuff. I'm not a big fan of cognitive psychology. I think it's nonsense. I'm not sure even they know what it means. What is cognition? Right? So, well, I investigate learning. Well, then you're a learning psychologist. Right? I did a survey of intro books and cognitive books on the definition of cognition. If I looked at 12 books, there were 12 different definitions. Yeah. And I'm sure you notice the same thing, that people just don't define terms anymore. And then if they do define it, what means one thing here means something else over there. Right? And there are things as universals. There is good and bad. Right? There are areas that are not gray. It's either this or it's either that. And that's what I try to instill in the students. There are absolutes, and you need to try to find what these things are. Either you tell the truth or you lie. Or you don't tell the truth part of the time. So now in response to that, I'm working with a student to create an app that, let's say a student says, I'm going to see you in office hours. They don't show up. Well, I can plot that. And then the next time I see them over a semester, well, why would I believe anything you say when you only have a 50% chance of doing what you say you're going to do? So then I'm going to show them this is what your data looks like. So that's almost finished. I got a beta version I'm starting to work on, an alpha version. And then stuff with the aquarium with teaching little kids about behavior. And if I can do that, other people can do it. But you have to want to work together, and you want to have to do it, right? You want to embody the principles of what is a person as a Phi Beta Kappa. And that's what I think is is important.
Well, I think you do that very well from where I'm sitting.
Yeah, because it's just really you get depressed.
That's when you have chocolate.
Yeah, I drink like 4 or 6 cups of coffee a day with that espresso coffee, iced coffee that I make. And sometimes you look at those students and you say, boy, they're going to go out there and they're just going to get killed because they're just so unprepared.
But then there's something that will surprise you.
Yeah,
May
some
make
do.
you proud.
But you remember and this is actually a comparative question I wanted to try to answer. Do you focus more on the positives or the negatives? And is that behavior throughout the phylogenetic scale? Like, does an ant remember the places where they're danger as opposed to the places where they find food? So does a human remember the better things, or the angels of your nature, as opposed to the bad things that happen to you? Like for me, I remember I used to play ice hockey, and football and other kinds of things. I remember every loss. I didn't have that many. I don't remember the wins as much as I remember the loss. So I remember the failures more than I remember the successes. And I'm not sure that's not the best way of doing things. But I wonder if other people feel the same way, and whether animals do this. It's the same the same kind of criteria. They remember the dangerous places rather than the places where it's not so dangerous. But these are empirical questions.
Self-preservation makes you think they'd remember the negative.
Right. That's right. But self-preservation also is good things.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So again, these are questions that I hope to answer someday.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to find the time, and I need bigger laboratory space.
More students to help
More
you find
more
the
students
answers.
Right? Because I have a laboratory in Brazil and other places around the world. But it's I can't be everywhere all the time. If I can get out of teaching and just do research full time, I'd rather do that. Because I'm not sure I'm making a difference, and that's what I wonder about all the time. And then with these phony course evaluations, and they are phony. And they say, well, we don't use it for tenure and promotion. Other thing, BS, right? BS. And as long as I never read them. I refuse to read them. If you got something to tell me, you tell me to my face. You don't do some anonymous form, especially when they don't include how often do you study, how many. Do you ever go to office hours, right? What grade do you expect in the class? So why are you taking the class? Like the class that I teach, most people never want to take them. So now I actually give them a survey in the beginning of the first day. Why are you in this class? Well, in this case, it meets at 8 in the morning and get it over with. Right? So most of them are like that. They have no interest in the material. Not all, but out of 36, I think maybe 6 of them had interest in the material, or 7. Most of them just met because it was convenient for them, and they needed a psych class, and they couldn't get into any others. Because mine are usually the last to fill. Because they'd rather take other classes, right? That may be more of their interest. So until that thing changes, why would I care about some anonymous piece of crap? Another one is this: the school pushes RateMyProfessor.com. How in the world can they? How in the world can we do that? And we call ourselves an intellectual institution, right? I mean, there was a website called myprofessorsucks.com, and I was like a star on it. It really pissed me off. And then last year, the Okali, I think it was last year, I was the 10th worst professor at OSU. And that, again, ticked me off. People wrote letters saying that's not true, but they never published them. Mm. So it's okay to insult people, but then we can't, as professors, we can't say, hey, you know, there's another point of view here. And that I thought was unfortunate, too. Mm-hmm. The department head wrote something, they wouldn't even put it in the newspaper. So I guess next fall they'll do the same thing. They look at ratemyprofessor.com and come up with the OSU professors with the worst ratings, right? And then they say, well, you know, these professors suck. Really? And not one of them even talked to me. And this is, and remember, these are students working on this paper, not to mention a faculty advisor. How can you have respect for people who do that? Mm-hmm. Right? Who don't even, and you're supposed to be a reporter, and you wonder why nobody trusts anybody anymore. You can't read a news story and believe anything. Mm-hmm. Well, what are they learning in the journalism school? To do stuff like this? That's not what they should be learning. Or they should be following up on their stories, by asking for comments. Well, why do you think this happened? They don't do that. And then wonder why nobody reads that paper. Right? And this is the kind of stuff, well, you know, there's this or that, you don't want to say anything. Well, we should say something. That's what we're supposed to be. We're faculty, we're supposed to be in charge of this university. Mm-hmm. Right? And in some ways, the administrators are supposed to work for us. Right, for their faculty, right, to improve conditions, you know, help the students, the faculty members reach our potential. And I see no one, you know, concerned about the individual faculty members, right? Why don't you get a grant? What can we do to help you get a grant? You know, what can we do to help you improve your scholarship? Right? I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I just don't see it. And then you got things like faculty council and stuff like that. They're busy doing other kinds of things. But there's I don't see anybody on campus concerned about the individual faculty member that slogs away in their office, working on books or articles, you know, thinking about the same issues that I think about. I mean, I just don't see it. Mm. Yeah. And what about the poor staff? You know, boy, they've got some of their salaries. And then they say, well, we're working for insurance money. I would even ask you what they pay at the library. But it can't be that high. But this is the stuff that I think people need to work on.
Make you administrator for a day with
right.
Power.
Yeah, with power for a day. Yeah. I would just snap my fingers and make make 4 or 5 changes, right? And I think it'd be better for the university. Right? Well, then you wonder why certain people, you know, who would ever want to be a department head? Right? With all the stuff they have to do. You know, and then you're like 30 years old, 40, you're going to be a department head. Mm. Yeah, I mean, it's like their career's over. You know, when I was a student, it probably was the last generation where your department was known by the research that the department head did. Mm. It was different. Now it's simply an administrator, and they spend so much time preparing reports, doing this and this. I don't think they have an opportunity to really work with individual faculty members. Mm. Every time I go to a country, I always bring back the staff presence. Just say, hey, I appreciate what you do. Good, without you, I wouldn't be able to get a lot of the stuff I need to get done, you know, effectively.
And you bring it back even though you might get detained.
Right, even though you might get detained, yeah, I bring things back. And, you know, people appreciate it. Yeah. Again, you know, this is small things. Mm-hmm. Like, you know, like Napoleon, he was amazed when he realized that people would do all sorts of things as soldiers for a piece of metal. You know, a medallion that said you're a good soldier, good this, good that. Mm-hmm. And that's what, what I think people need here. You know, rewards now and then. Say, hey, you know, we appreciate what you do.
Pat on the back.
Right, pat on the back,
mm-hmm.
Yeah. And for at least for some students, like I think also for faculty, when they were a student, they got Phi Beta Kappa. That was a big pat on the back.
Huge.
Right, big pat on the back. Mm-hmm. And I know it made all the difference in the world of my mother. And I always appreciated what she did. You know, she wasn't educated, but she appreciated things, and then she knew that. I don't know. Again, I think this is another universal, that the generation wants the next generation to be better off than they were. I'm not sure that's as true as much now as it was, back in her day. Like when her mother came over from Italy, it was around Mussolini's time. The first thing that her mother had my mother do was learn English. First thing, because you're in your new country. Right now, people don't want to learn English.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, is unfortunate because, how are you going to have a good life? Like if I ever move over to Brazil, I'm going to have to fill out forms in Portuguese, negotiate everything in Portuguese, like my wife did when she came here. I'd like to think I'm able to have those skills, but you don't know until you do it. I know that she did it. She filled out a driving application in English. I helped teach her English. She took an English class, and I don't know if you met her. So
Yes.
She's got a good life here.
She does.
Yeah. Much better than it was in Brazil. Then I thought, well, gee, why not the churches get involved in teaching like they did when I was a kid? They had free English classes at the church on a Saturday or Friday evening. And so then you get the churches involved. Why not have study halls for kids from disadvantaged backgrounds? That people can volunteer where the kids can go to a place where they can study for 2 hours, Monday through Thursday or something, and do their homework, and have tutors there to help them. These are things that can easily be done, but you have to want to do them. I don't think it's that hard. But then you got to get people who are in power, I guess, to be able to snap their fingers and get it done. But people like that don't talk to people like me and other faculty members. Anyway, that's what I think. I'll probably get in trouble for all this, though. You see.
I don't know. You shouldn't.
Yeah, right. I shouldn't. Right. We'll see. Because I understand again I do course evaluations, but not if they're going to be such crap like they are now. Right. And then it's online. I mean, how much can that cost? You can't add those 5, 6, 10 questions from subject variable questions.
Mm-hmm. And it needs the context to go with
Right.
it, right?
You got to have the context. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Again, it's just after a while it gets frustrating because it could be so. I enjoy here. I'm glad I came here. It's a good place. You got some excellent programs, great faculty, but it could be better. It could be better. And there's no reason why OSU can't lead with this community kinds of programs. Get people to try to get churches together and religious institutions to offer these study halls for kids in different areas of Oklahoma. I think I could be wrong, but I thought OSU has more land than any other university in the United States. It's all over the state.
Mm.
And they got various OSU campuses where that can be done there too. And then if you want to have volunteers, why not get the College of Education to help lead this push? Right? To get volunteers, and they would train others, and they would create their own their own study hall programs. And then use the existing facilities, the churches, the mosques, the synagogues that are in Oklahoma. It's not that hard to do. Get the state to have a contest at OSU for motivational quotes that could be put all right around. Why not have a website where students can talk about their OSU experiences and why, man, I'm glad I came here. I recommended all these things in the past, but it's like deaf ears.
Mm.
So like nobody gives a shit for for whatever reason, or they care, or for that 20-minute conversation, then they go on to something else.
Well, at least they cared about getting this done. The Phi Beta Kappa. It went beyond 20 minutes.
Yeah, and a lot of that was Hargis.
Yeah, way
was
beyond
Hargis.
20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm glad he recognized the value of it. Because again, if you're from this part of the country, you're probably not that familiar with it. But if you're older, certainly you've seen it in movies, television shows. Oh, this guy's Phi Beta Kappa. Game shows, look at some of the guys, Phi Beta Kappa. It was all over the place. And maybe it still is now, but again, I don't have a TV and things like that. So I'm sort of divorced from that now.
But you have your key.
But I got my key.
Your second key.
Yep, the second key.
Well, I think that's a good place to stop, don't you?
Yep.
Well, Thank you for talking with me.
My pleasure. I really enjoyed it.
It's fun.